We're going to start with the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and next on the agenda is our roll call, and I'll allow our secretary to do a roll call.
Mr. Anderson?
Here.
Mr. Jackson?
Here.
Mr. Kern? Mr. Makuchi?
Here.
Ms. Mitchell?
Here.
Mr. Akmanowicz?
Here.
Mr. Reimers?
Here.
Mr. Spear?
Here.
Ms. Weed?
Okay, next item of business is the approval of the minutes. And get a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion. Second.
Mr. Spear? Mr. Anderson? Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. There's an extension? Alright, next we're going to move on to public comment, and I believe we do have some folks signed up this evening for public comment.
First we have Mr. Betts, and you have 3 minutes, please.
What? Good to see you. I can still recognize you.
Keep moving further this way.
Okay, well, I'm Christopher Betts. I publish the Upper Buck Street. Reason I'm here is that for the last 5 years now, this past year, the 6th year, there was a program put together called the Sea of Blue. The idea was you would get a lot of companies, local businesses to sponsor these shirts, and the idea was to turn the entire Quakertown side of the football stadium at the Thanksgiving Day game turned blue. So we printed out nearly 2,000 t-shirts, and those t-shirts were paid for by everyone you see on the back of the shirt here. About 32 different businesses in town. Each pledged $250 to be on this shirt, and we put out almost 2,000 of those shirts. However, it's not just for that. The idea was that we try to make some money on it and then give that money away. So I have some money here. We're going to divide the money 3 ways between the football booster club, the cheerleaders, and the marching band. So I got checks. If we have representatives who want to accept them. Here we go.
You got a cheerleader check too, right?
I had a cheerleader check. Oh, yeah, I'm making you a cheerleader check too. Okay. Oh, sorry. Here we go. $500.
Hey.
Partner, yes. And we got $500 for the Quakertown marching band. And oh, sure. And we also have $500 for the cheerleaders, so that's $1,500 that we raised in excess of.
If we could just really quick recognize the students put together artwork for the shirts, and then it was chosen, and this year was Kenzie Sadowski that actually designed the shirt through the art department.
So.
All right.
Thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you so much for that generous donation. All right, next person up for speaking.
Okay, we have Miss Ritter. Also
And
3
I
minutes, please.
Forgot to say, state your name and area of residence. I'm slipping, sorry.
Hello, my name is Molly Ritter. I'm coming from Clear, and I live in Richland Township. Okay, so this is regarding some student curriculum. I have many times been challenged with some of the material that is incorporated in school curricula for the sake of enhancing student engagement. The question I propose to the board tonight is, how did we get to the point in which R-rated films are so casually labeled as having educational value? Recently, my husband and I received a form requesting our signature to give permission for our high school student to view several films in class to visually study novels that they are reading. This list consisted of several PG-13 rated movies, along with one R-rated film. Curious, my husband and I reviewed the R-rated film to learn why it received such a rating. We were shocked to find it contained the following scenes. A woman is seen topless for an entire scene with her breasts fully visible. Very brief, a couple are shown having sex with bare breasts shown. A man is seen floating in a river while fully nude and his crotch can be seen. And 2 men drive by a nudist camp where several people are seen completely naked. 2 fully nude women are seen walking. Their genitals and pubic region are clearly visible. I'm sorry for the children in the audience. I'm just reading what I have. These are just a few of the notes. Our student commented that these scenes would be fast-forwarded through. Well, perhaps you find comfort sitting with your team having a quote-unquote educational and cultural discussion while fast-forwarding past full frontal male and female nudity. But why? Why is this necessary in our classrooms? You know, one of Quakertown Community School District Police statements is, we believe in providing a safe and student-centered culture and environment in all of our schools. How do you qualify such material under that belief? Your student handbook also has policies regarding the possession or transfer of obscene material, print or electronic. Why do these mandates apply to our students but not to the role models that lead them? Your curricula places policies on dress codes and obscene material from students, yet contradicts itself by exposing R-rated material that our society already presses on our youth and twists it by renaming it for, what, intellectual analysis? I urge the school board to remove any use of R-rated material from school curricula and own up to fulfilling your duty as responsible role models. Otherwise, it will be strongly recommended to remove the words providing a safe culture from your belief statements. Thank you.
Do you mind, Mrs. Ritter? Thank you, by the way, for sharing. Do you mind if I ask the movie? I'm just curious. If you remember it, that's okay.
Into the Woods? I've actually never heard of it, but I believe that's the name of the movie.
Into the Wild.
Into the Wild. Okay.
He's watched it clearly. Okay, thank you very much.
Ritter, can I have a copy of your speech? Will you email it to me or?
Sure, certainly.
Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.
Next we have Ms. Del Rossi, and 3 minutes again.
Please state your name and area of residence.
My name is Teresa Del Rossi and I live in Milford. First, I'd like to ask the board to refer to the policy meeting minutes on February 13th, which I attended, my husband. The minutes in the policy committee report are inaccurate. I attended the policy meeting to speak out about the policy members' intent to change policy 115, vocational education. I was given an opportunity at the end of the meeting for comment. What I said, and I stated publicly many reasons for not changing the policy 115, but in an effort to keep this short, I asked the board to remember your mission statement. The mission of this board is to prepare, and again I was rereading this, all students in the district, and this should not exclude homeschoolers. That is what I stated at the policy meeting. I'm not sure how the statement that it says is in there, but that is the statement I read, and it was not recorded in the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Del Rossi. All right, anyone else, would anyone else like to make a public comment at this time? move on to the next item on the agenda, and that is our superintendent report.
Take it away.
Student showcase is up first, ma'am.
Go for it.
Mr. Magnus, you're up.
Okay, thank you. I'm here to represent our outstanding students of the month. So I'm going to call them up now. We have 3 students with us today. Emily Goodwin.
Come on up.
Hannah Beal. Come on up, Hannah. And also Chris Knight. Before I talk about these 3 great students, I want to acknowledge the Rotary Club. So we're fortunate enough to have Ken Carr and Bill Tazinski in the audience with us today. Both of the Rotarians. Ken is 29 years, and Bill has served 20 years in the Rotary Club of Quakertown. So we're really thankful for their contributions and everything they do for us. Thank you. They do put on a great banquet for these outstanding students. They also provide each student with a $100 check that the students are used for their college or whatever they feel necessary. So again, I just want to acknowledge that. But first one I'm going to talk about here is Emily Goodwin. She is a junior. And another thing, you have 3 excellent students. These are all juniors. Unfortunately tonight, 2 of the individuals are seniors and they cannot make it, but I will acknowledge them shortly. Emily Rose Goodwin, junior, nominated our Outstanding Student of the Month for the month of September. She was nominated by 3 teachers, Mr. Stonebeck, Ms. Henry, and Ms. Sullivan. Ms. Goodwin here is involved with our mini-thon. She has straight A's. Let me back up and tell you that she does have straight A's. She's involved in our mini-thon, our Key Club, our Best Buddies, Class of 2021 Leadership, Fundraising Committee. She's our wrestling manager, and she's also part of the Feed My Starving Children. Outside of school, she works at Lake Naga Mixed. She tutors math. She volunteers at the local hospital. She takes her work very seriously, her schoolwork, and she believes that she was nominated because she doesn't procrastinate and she's very well organized. Her goal is to one day possibly become a registered nurse. So that is Emily Goodwin. The next individual that I want to call is Hannah Beal. Hannah is our Outstanding Student of the Month for the month of October. Hannah, again, also is a junior. She's part of our varsity swim team and also our varsity field hockey team. She's involved with Key Club, Best Buddies, National Honor Society, Class of 2021 Reps. She's mini-thon. What else? STEM related. Okay, so she wants to work in the STEM field. Work related has become a labor and delivery doctor or a biostatistician. She says to more writing-oriented work, and hopefully she can explain that to you all. She likes the field of journalism as well, so she's kind of mixed right now. She also did mention even education as a possible teacher. Her schools in the future are either Penn State, Villanova University, or Moravian College, and that's Hannah Beal. Last but not least, I'm going to introduce Chris Knight. Christopher is our December Student of the Month, again another junior as I explained. Chris comes to us, again, good grades as always, but he's one of our tech students that is going into the automotive industry. He currently works at Piazza Suburban dealership. He actually has work study right now, so half the day he's in the classroom, and the other half of the day he's actually working in industry. Chris plans on becoming a master mechanic, and he's thankful that he was selected for the work release and the apprenticeship that he's doing right now. So that is Chris Knight. Again, to talk a little bit about these students and our program in general is that every month we nominate not only an outstanding student, but also this is our outstanding, but we also have student of the month. So what happens is every month 4 individuals, 9th through 12th grade, get nominated, and then we allow our journalism team to sit and look at the interview process and pick out who they feel is the star of the group, the star of that month. So these 3 individuals definitely have a lot of things going for them, not only academically, socially in our school, outside. You hear all the different clubs and activities they do. So just an awesome job in school, outside of school, and we're really blessed to have such great students. Again, there are three excellent juniors. The seniors that could not be a part of today's celebration is Ian Cummings, who was our November Student of the Month, Outstanding Student of the Month, and also Tyler Einhoff, who was the January Outstanding Student of the Month. Both of those individuals had some obligations this evening. So any questions for any of these three? I know last time it was a little bit more individuals and I actually did like a guessing game, but is there any questions for these great students? Because they're more than willing to answer. The Rotary Club, they do a nice job. We bring them up. The Rotary Club asks them numerous questions about their future, what they plan on doing, and I think they're well versed and trained in public speaking. So if you have any questions for them, the board, again, you can turn around and these are some of our great students that are walking the halls today.
Photo time.
Photos.
While they're doing photos, I'd like to add, Madam President, that on our two seniors who aren't here tonight, I know that Tyler Einhoff, he's got the district swim meet today. I believe that was today. So he couldn't make it, but you might have seen out there in the social media, Tyler received a letter on Saturday from West Point, and he received his appointment. So this summer he'll be going through cadet basic training up there at West Point to the U.S. Military Academy. I know both of them. I've written letters of recommendation. Both of them, I know Ian is going to do great things and probably one of our Ivies. I know what he's looking for. I don't know where he is tonight, but just wanted to let you know about that.
Yeah, Ian's schools are Harvard, MIT, Princeton, to name a few. So he is the top shelf for sure. Again, great individuals, great students.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Continuing on with the superintendent report, I would like to first start with Joanne Parati from the intermediate unit. Across the eastern part of the state, she provides services out of the IU to help school boards go through the strategic planning process, which has recently changed from once every 6 years to once every 3 years. So she's going to give the mandated board community overview in short order. Joanne.
Great, thank you very much. I'm honored to be here once again to work with the Quakertown Community School District in the development of your required comprehensive plan. So if you would look at either screen, I have a brief PowerPoint to kind of give you that 30,000 foot overview of the comprehensive planning process. So I want to thank Dr. Harder for a nice introduction. As we develop the comprehensive plan, which is a 3-year plan, I'll show you in a few minutes the timeline. But as we develop the plan, the first thing that we have to look at is the mission statement. And we read the mission statement, we look at it, we say to ourselves, is this mission statement still us in the Quakertown Community School District? So that's one of the areas that we'll look at as we develop the plan over the next few months. This is our timeline for the comprehensive plan. So if we start with the end in mind, the comprehensive plan for the Department of Education is due to them by November 30th. And then if you jump ahead to where we've started in the beginning of January, meeting with your superintendent and his leadership team to go over the process. We just recently had a leadership team reflection session where I worked with your superintendent and his leadership team to look at the strengths and challenges and opportunities and threats and fears that we have for the district, and what their reflection was about the district for the next 3 years. This Saturday, I'll have an opportunity to be the external facilitator, working with you as school board members on Saturday morning to do the same type of session that I did with the superintendent and his leadership team. Then I will be back on March 12th, and we will have our first steering team meeting. And this is a community gathering of community stakeholders to give us input on their thoughts and ideas on some focus areas for the district for the next 3 years. So that'll include parents, it will include business, industry, teachers, administrators, support staff, students, school board members. And so we're looking forward to that invitation going out and having people invited to give us feedback on March 12th. Then from there, we'll take all that information from the community, from our leadership team with your superintendent, and from our school board gathering and reflection session, and then we'll actually start developing action plans for those goal and focus areas. We'll spend time, April and May, developing that, and then we'll bring that steering team back in May, on May 21st, to have them give us that stamp of approval as what was developed. Because this isn't a plan that is just developed by one person. It really involves everyone in the Quakertown Community School District giving us their feedback on what we need to do for the next 3 years. Then from there, we will have the comprehensive plan as an informational item to the board in June, as a respect, giving it to the board ahead of time. And then it's a requirement by the Department of Education to have that plan on public display for 28 days on your website for the community and stakeholders to give feedback. And so that will be the month of June into July. Then we'll look in June to have board approval on the district superintendent goals. And then from there, we'll finish up the required web tool from the Department of Education, taking all that information and making sure it's all in one document for the Department of Education. Normally it's about 85 to 125 pages. It's a pretty big document, but it involves a tremendous amount of work. And so I want to congratulate your superintendent and his leadership team for meeting with me, giving feedback. I look forward to working with you this Saturday as a board, and then on March 12th, looking forward to working with the community. Then also, part of this required comprehensive plan is a special education plan. And so your special ed team here at Quakertown Community School District worked already on a required steering team meeting. They will be working on bringing the special ed plan to the school board as an informational item in March at your board meeting. And then again, it's a requirement from the Department of Education that the special ed plan be on public display for 28 days on your website. Then we'll bring that plan back to the board for approval on at your April 23rd board meeting, and then it's a requirement that I submit the plan to the Department of Education, the special ed plan, by May 1st. Now, the pieces of that plan, of the special ed plan, we will fold into the district plan also. So even though they're separate plans submitted to the Department of Education, it's very important that there's consistency in what we're doing in the district. To give you kind of that quick overview, the board members, your superintendent, his leadership team, the community here even tonight, all of you have dreams and visions and ideas for the Quakertown Community School District, and the comprehensive plan is building that bridge and turning the plan into operational, having it action-oriented, not a plan that sits on a shelf or sits on your desktop on your computer, but rather this plan is an integral part of what we do here in the district every day, each and every day for every student. So I always like to make the kind of the, I guess you could say a saying that Dr. Hardner at 2 o'clock on a Friday doesn't get on a PA system or says anything to his principals like, stop what you're doing and work on the comprehensive plan. But rather, the comprehensive plan is an integral part of job accountabilities, with the district employees, job accountabilities with your superintendent. It's part of what we do every day. So it's not a separate plan that's over here and then you're doing work for the district, but rather the board's goals, the superintendent's goals, the staff, the community, the parents, we're all having that plan on a page. And so that's what we want to do when we develop the comprehensive plan. So now the Department of Education has specific guidelines and requirements. And it's a brand new web tool. It just came out not even a month ago. So the way it's set up is called Ready, Set, Go. And so the ready part is that we're preparing for the planning. That includes our steering committee, those reflection pieces. We have the district profile. What comprises your school district? So if a young family wanted to move into Quakertown and they wanted to see what you offered, what would you explain to them? What would it say about your district? We also look at the mission, the vision, and your educational values. So that's the planning, that's the plan, prepare for planning, the ready piece. And then we have the set piece, and I'm not going to go through all these components, but rather to give you an idea, it's for your superintendent and the leadership team and my work with them to complete a complete needs assessment. And so we look at all those strengths and challenges here in the district. We look at all the English and language arts piece, mathematics, science, technology, engineering. And we also look at related academics like the career readiness. And so there are some other pieces on the set piece that I'll be working with your superintendent and the leadership team in the actual web tool. And then the go piece really involves the board and the community. When we set those goals, we have evidence-based strategies, we develop action plans. It must include professional development steps for our staff. And then communications is a huge piece. How do we communicate this plan out to our community? Those people that might not have students in the district but live in the district. And then again, the go piece is that requirement to submit it to the Department of Education. We also want to look at standards, curriculum, instruction, assessment, safe and supportive schools, the materials and resources. Again, that professional education and special education. It's those core foundations on how we do things. And to do this plan, it's very important to look at where we have been, where are we right now, and where do we want to go. So that's a real key piece that we need to look at the places that we've been, where we are right now, and where do we want to go. So our present comprehensive plan that the district is still completing had 4 domains: the culture for learning, the academic programs, safety and security, and operations and finance. So some of the pieces of that plan could be rolled into the next. We're going to look at what's been completed, what still needs to be done, and what are those focus areas then that we want to develop going forward. So you never want to forget about where you've been and where you are now to get you where you want to go. So this is my favorite quote: the main thing is to make the main thing the main thing. And so that's what we want to do. We don't want to end up with 300 goals and strategies and 1,000 action plans that we can never complete. But what are those things that we want to float to the top for the next 3 years that we want to accomplish? And that's what we want to do with the comprehensive plan. So our next steps, as I said, I'll be here on Saturday with the board doing a reflection session. And then March 12th is our first steering team meeting and getting the community involved and giving us feedback and input. So any questions? But otherwise, I do want to thank you for the opportunity to kind of give you that 30,000-foot view tonight. And I'd be very happy to answer any questions you might have.
I think this is a question for our own administration. Has the steering, the public steering team been chosen already, or
or is it just open to the public, whoever wants to come out?
Well, we do need people to, like RSVP, and so Gary actually wrote a story and put it out, and I believe we have about 12 volunteers so far. I also have an invitation ready to go out to some of the internal stakeholders like the board, the administrative team, our unions and teachers, because the composition of the steering committee is supposed to have representatives from all those different groups.
Even students too.
And
we have
students,
students too.
exactly. I talked with Mr. V. I talked with Mr. V about recruiting some students to also come and serve on the steering committee. So we want the broadest possible group of stakeholders so that we get all of, input from all the different stakeholder groups in the community.
Okay.
Gary has a great site. If you just, on the website for the school district, if you just Google search comprehensive planning, there's a great site there that he has. Then you can click on a link and
It's right on the link's right on their main.
Oh, it's on the main page.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great, terrific. So that's a great way for you to learn.
How many
more.
districts have you done this for?
I've been doing this for 24 years at the Bucks County Intermediate Unit, and probably over 1,000, 1,500. Yeah, like right now I have.
think you're doing it as a career now.
It is my career.
Okay.
It has been my career. I absolutely love doing it.
And her spirit is, she's like this all the time.
I love it. I
Yeah,
do.
she's like this all the time. Thank you, Joanne.
Okay,
I just
thank
want to
you.
say that I'm super impressed with the amount of detail that goes into this comprehensive plan, and I think it's a great idea that it is going from 3 years, or 6 years rather, down to 3 years, because when I look at our process here internally of how we put together the superintendent goals, I think there's a lot that we can pull from this and learn in the ongoing years, especially bringing in various different stakeholders, getting multiple perspectives, and digging deep, but at the end of the day, like you said, keeping it really simple so that it's not overwhelming for our leadership. So I really look forward to our meeting on Saturday.
Great. We'll have a great time. It'll be
Sounds
fun,
good.
but it'll be a lot of work.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Joanne.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you.
No questions, but it is good to see you again.
Speaking about superintendent goals, in the on board docs is a written report, and we'll get to the very first item on the Domain 1 Culture for Teaching and Learning. This is our third year, but increasing ownership and effective use of student and building data. Tonight is our fourth presentation from an elementary team, and tonight we have Richmond Elementary School. So Nicole, it's your show.
No, I said she could have left it.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Nicole Zerbelis. I'm the proud principal of Richland Elementary School, and we have with us some of the most amazing, dedicated staff that we had. Everyone else is as well. We just couldn't fit everybody in here. So, we're really looking forward to sharing some things that we have planned for you, and our goal tonight is really to have you see a little window into what we do and how we work as a team, to use various types of data to meet the needs of the whole child. So we look at academically, socially, emotionally, and behaviorally. So I'm going to let my team introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Robbie DeStefano. I'm an interventionist and coach at Richland Elementary.
Hello, my name is Jen Froschauer, and I am an instructional coach and interventionist as well.
Hi, I'm Luke Witz, and I'm a third grade teacher.
I'm Elizabeth Coyle. I'm an English language development teacher.
Hello, my name is Debbie Schmolk. I am the school counselor at Richland.
My name is Melissa Reese. I'm a third grade teacher. I'm also a member of the Lighthouse team and the PBIS team.
I was going to say, they all have many other roles at the school as well. They're each members of action teams, and many of them lead the teams as well. So
I think not to interrupt. You're my neighbor, right? Hi, neighbor.
Yes.
Not like right next door, but anyway.
Maybe he didn't want
Sorry.
to. Maybe he didn't want to say that.
I was like, wait a minute.
we are proud to be recognized as a Leader in Me school. And if you've heard about Leader in Me, it's based off of the 7 habits, Covey's 7 habits of highly effective people, and goes with our philosophy. And that's why our vision is our Richland family is a welcoming community dedicated to bringing out the leader in each of us. And we celebrate a school where differences strengthen our love of learning. And we share that with you because everything that we do is really through a leadership lens, and that goes down to the student level. So everything that we do is meeting the needs of students. And we have our beliefs up there, and we do address the whole child. And when we're looking at data and information, we are careful to recognize that kids are not numbers, and that we really do meet all of their needs. And in case you're interested in learning more about the Leader in Me, we have included links on this if you'd like to know more, and there's also information on our website too.
Okay, Debbie, Liz, and I have the opportunity to be the Leader in Me Lighthouse coordinators for Richland. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how data and academics connect with the Leader in Me. So let me move this slide here. No? Sorry. Okay, so as you can see on this slide, the Leader in Me has 3 focus areas: leadership, culture, and academics. The staff at Richland has been trained in all of these areas, and our focus this year, we began the training of academics. So the idea is to enhance student-led achievement and then empower teacher instruction. So how do we use data to see the impact of Leader in Me? Is it working, and where are we growing? This slide is going to show you the Leader in Me MRA, which stands for Measurable Results Assessment. So as you can see on this screen, a survey is given to staff, students, and parents each spring. So the results from here are in the area of leadership, and this is the growth from 2018 to 2019. And as you can see, the increase in staff readiness, student leadership, and parent involvement. So when we look at this as a team, we look at it and decide where we want to focus our goals for the following year. So this year, our focus has been a lot on student leadership. So next year, when we look at this, we hope to see a lot of growth in that area. And also in the academic piece, which we're starting to implement, which Liz is going to talk more about.
Okay, this slide kind of, I'm sorry, not used to this. Thanks, Joe. Okay, so the slide that will be coming in a moment is a snapshot. There we go. Okay. So as we know, to be college and career ready students and adults, we need to be able to set goals and monitor our progress toward our goals. And one of the important components of Leader in Me is that every teacher in the building, every staff member, and every child sets a wildly important goal, which you heard of if you read Covey. So we have our students doing that on a personal level, so it might be an activity they do after school, it might be helping out at home. They set a goal and they work with their family or independently to kind of track their progress, but also in all areas of academics as well. So this is a 5th grade's leadership notebook, which is where we house those goals and anything that a student wants to collect in terms of artifacts of their leadership in the school. So for example, this 5th grader tracks her scores on reading, math, and language arts. She records an academic goal, a personal goal related to her dance hobby. She tracks her homework completion and her reading. And what we're really proud of this year is how students record all their leadership jobs, we call them. So we have many student committees, from peer tutors to photography crew to interpreters that I get to work with. They're always excited to welcome visitors, so I invite any of you to come by and learn more about Leader and Me from them, and you'll be met by ambassadors and whole teams of students who want to show off. So the Student Leadership Notebook is where they kind of house all of that, and they monitor their progress. We featured that and allowed students to showcase their proudest work, whether it's leadership roles or learning from written work to art projects. When we designed an opportunity we called a learning walk in November, similar to a gallery walk, which is an instructional strategy a lot of teachers use. We just kind of made a school-wide gallery walk where students display their work. We walk through different grade levels, different classes, and students asked questions of each other, they gave feedback, and they were really motivated to showcase all the great things going on in our building.
Sorry, technology is just not my thing, but I've worked with Joe for a very long time, and he's tried to teach me time and time again. Still working on it, wildly important. Okay, so at the end of last year, we, in the spring, started talking about our assessment and intervention. And we realized that assessment really informs our instruction, but felt as though it was interfering with our instruction at times, and it was really unpredictable. So at Richland, we decided to go on a predictable 8-week cycle. So what we do is we have 2 weeks of assessment where we're really digging down and seeing what students know and are able to do, followed by 6 weeks of an intervention cycle. And during that intervention cycle, we do all of our interventions with our students, and the teachers are really aware of what they're doing with their class as well, and using that assessment to inform their instruction. And when they're off, the teachers meet with our core team, and we talk about instructional decisions, which are data-driven, and we determine where student supports are needed, and the student results, we see, are they growing, and if not, where we need to change the intervention or intensity of intervention. This is a snapshot that Nicole shares each week in our This Week at Richland, and that's what teachers see as well. So you can see how the calendar is shaded with the 2 red weeks, and then you can only see 3 of the green, and then into April go the next 3 green. The red means exactly red: stop, assess, review data, and make instructional decisions as a team. And the green means go. We're going to continue to instruct and monitor our instruction. All of our students 3 times yearly participate in a universal screening called the DIBELS, which stands for the Dynamic Indicators of Basic Early Literacy Skills. This is a snapshot of our beginning of the year data compared to our middle of the year data from one of our first grade classrooms. In between the assessment cycle and during the intervention cycle, all kids who score red on the DIBELS are progress monitored. And that simply means that bi-weekly, every student who is scored red or below is given an additional test so we can see if they're improving with their intervention. So is the intervention working, or do we need to make a change?
Okay, just a few quick examples of other data we use. We use NWEA and our Eureka/Eduelastic platform to figure out what do we already know, meaning what do the students already know, and then what do we need to learn. NWEA results highlight the strengths and opportunities for growth, especially the first one. If you take a look at the September NWEA, you can maybe look for, okay, pacing. We really get this concept. Can I move through it a little quicker? Maybe I can. Maybe I have to slow down in that particular concept. And then in December and in the spring, we can use that to make sure that the growth we expected, the goals we set, are being met, simply because NWA gives us that data. In our math class, or my math class, I also use a pre and a post assessment. So there's 3 scenarios that come out of that data. We all demonstrate, the entire class demonstrates that they understand that concept. no sense for Mr. Witz to go over what you already know. So we just skip it. Second scenario, some do, some don't. So some students master those concepts, they go into a project-based learning group, and they get projects and they're wandering around the floor and they're drawing whatever they're drawing and building whatever they're building. And I'm going through with the lesson-based learners, and we're just systematically going through the map just like it was planned. And then the third scenario is only certain topics in a module give us trouble. So then we remap that module, we leave out what we already know, and then we just focus on what we don't know.
At Richland, we focus on the whole child, including their emotional needs, their academic needs, and their behavioral needs. And as this graphic shows, it shows the multi-tiered system of supports, and it shows how it directly aligns with the PBIS model and the Leader in Me.
All right, this next slide is, we're going to be using an assessment tool that is called the Student Risk Screening Scale. We've been collaborating with Lisa Paletti, who is the district's program and training specialist, to help us understand how the implementation and the carry out of this screener will go. From these results, we'll be able to better understand our building's needs and form groups based on the screener as well. All right, this slide just shows you some of the current groups that we have running, some of the supportive groups. You can see, and these are based off right now office discipline referrals, the grade level data meetings that we have, and parent and teacher input.
Okay, that was our little bit of a window into. We wanted to, where hopefully you can see that the beliefs that we hold here at Richland, and through the examples that we shared, show you some of the ways that we do use data to address the whole child academically, socially, emotionally, and behaviorally. Wanted to give you kind of a little taste of several different things. There is more information on several of the slides. If you wanted to click more, and the alignment with Leader in Me and PBIS, the MTSS slide, there's more information on each of those. So we wanted to give you the opportunity to do that. We can't leave without sharing some pictures, and some of these are recent pictures of our leaders. We do have Leader in Me assemblies. The one on the right is our latest Leader of the Month. Certificate winners for that one, or leaders that have earned that, we celebrate as part of PBIS and also as Leader in Me. And we love the opportunity to highlight another time so much of the work and the leadership that our students do as well. That's a huge part of who we are, and they're why we do this. So thank you very much for having us. And any questions or more? Like I said, there's definitely more information on each of the slides as well.
I had one. This Leader in Me, I guess the program or whatever that you run, is that something that you run year after year, or is it something that is just like 1 year and then you'll pick something next year?
So this is my 4th year as principal at Richland, and we've done it each of those years. And we've definitely invested some time and resources into getting training as a staff. So we've all gone through the training for the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People as a whole staff. Then we go through more training for leadership, culture, and academics. So it's actually more of a philosophy than a program. So it's definitely just a way of thinking and ways that we apply. So everything we do really funnels through that leadership lens. And it goes down to empowering all staff and students. Yeah, I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon.
Okay.
I think it's amazing that how data is driving sort of education and real-time data, and it's phenomenal. I think it's great. Your example of just kind of adjusting things based on what kids know and what they may not know. It's just, instead of wasting time and wasting everybody's energy, I think it's awesome. So great job.
I also think it's important to recognize that the students are learning by doing instead of actually just sitting there and not participating. Here you're getting them to participate, you're getting them engaged, and I think that's huge.
Yeah, I really like the leader in me. My kids do the same thing at night, so I find that it's really helpful for them. They even recite some of that stuff at home, which is great, so they can incorporate some of that into their daily lives. I was curious, and I think it's wonderful that you all are looking at also the social and the emotional aspect of things, because that can certainly play a big part. How is that measured? I guess if you could just give me a quick idea, because I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of things, definitely multiple measures. We always say relationships first. We've had different programs where we kind of mentor and match adults up with students. We're always eliciting feedback from teachers. If there are students, I know some of the examples of this is small because our counselor has for groups. If there's a resiliency group, there could be grieving, that kind of thing. But I agree with you. If there's something that we can work with them socially, emotionally, we kind of have to do that before we really get to all the academically. But then also, as we've merged our Leader in Me with our School and Positive Behavior program, and as they referenced also, that's where we're looking at starting that new scale. So that's going to be really interesting to roll that out, because it really just involves the teachers, each kind of taking a list of their kids and kind of taking a couple minutes to rate them or express any concerns, whether they're external or internal behaviors. So it's just kind of another check where if there's somebody who needs a little extra TLC or can benefit from a group, some kind of intervention in that way. We also have so many kids who come to us because of the whole student empowerment and want to start clubs. So we constantly have that, and they do. So we had a student who said, "I'm so into history. I wonder if anybody else is. Nobody else I know is." Did it on the announcements for 2 days. We've got dozens of kids, and they find staff and we work with them and figure out a time to do that. So I think that's another way that we kind of meet all of their needs, so make them feel really successful.
Great, wonderful. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight. I mean, we really appreciate just getting some insight into the day-to-day things, and it was a great presentation. So thank you all so much.
Thank you very much.
Moving on and completing very quickly the rest of the superintendent's report. There are several pages of updates on our goals and all that. I'd like to shout out a couple of the things. One is the Mr. V's high school, as the high school students are going down to Quakertown and participating in the diversity club down at and make that walk 2 blocks to QE once a month to educate the younger students. So and they do a lot of other volunteering there and interning. Also, the Leader in Me event, they I guess it was just this past weekend or last Friday. You had 150 parents under Domain 3 in academic program and parent engagement. We had about 150 parents and students attending Friday morning's Leader in Me breakfast and awards recognition. At under Domain 4, culture, safety, and awareness, a couple of things that have gone on. One, our student forum, the countywide student forum, the high school, Mr. V hosted all the school district high school students, juniors and seniors.
Yes, primarily juniors of the high school.
From across the county here this past week in a very special event, talking about safety and wellness issues. We also, something I recommend you put on your calendar if you have a moment, is on the at Strayer Middle School at 7 p.m. on March 10th. And it'll be at the high school on March 10th. Is Dr. Jared Spencer, a sports psychologist and author. He's coming in to speak to athletes and coaches. And that should be a really good event for you, just for leadership-wise. It's being paid for by the award-winning WHIP radio that gave us the money because we had the most clicks on social media to get them to cover our Turkey Bowl, Penn Ridge Quakertown game. They gave us $2,500 each school, and that we're using that money to bring in this special speaker. So it's open to the community, but I would recommend that you go to that. Also, back on February 5th, we had an opportunity to do another tabletop drill. Mr. Spear had the opportunity to kind of sit, and I said, as a new guy, I wanted him to have an understanding of how things look. So so he could have his eyes and ears and see how we periodically work with the borough, Richland Township, State Police. And there's about 25 of us there around the table. Scott McElray took us through a scenario that was not the high school. So we're mixing things up now that we've done it enough times. Also, just to make it a formal announcement, I am not role modeling a coronavirus. As I was getting an executive session in the previous finance meeting that was held before the meeting, I have a secondary infection, and so and it's not contagious, but I just wanted to keep a little privacy to that. And so this is all about me instead of about everybody else. But in that regard about corona, yes, sir.
Is it just because you didn't shave?
I tell you, household 6, the boss at home, she does not like a beard, so let's leave it there. Just in talking about coronavirus, as I shared with you all, and I want to share publicly with everybody, next Tuesday at the IU is bringing together health officials from the county departments, hospital CEOs, superintendents, and others together in the morning. March 3rd, 8:30 at the IU. I'll be attending. I'll be bringing around our head nurse, Margie Regan. In the past, this is a drill that school districts are quite familiar with. We went through the H1N1. I was superintendent in a different school district, but we did the same things. I'm sure here, a lot of getting the preparation piece. But I will tell you one thing, knowing about trying to find masks, you can't find them across America. I've tried to order them online, went out to stores, they don't exist. A lot of people are stockpiling already, but we will get a message out. I know I received some feedback from a couple board members, or at least one board member already about it. We'll get the message out as soon as I get some information from what the county's thinking, what the state's thinking, but the process is about the same. Biggest thing is, we just want, if you're ill, stay home. You have the flu symptoms, stay home. And that's the best way to do it. Going down to some other things, we have we hosted a great celebration for our athletic program. Our wrestling team took #1 this past weekend. We hosted the District 1 East Championship. That was for individuals, but our team points, there's a champion as a team, and we came out #1. That was pretty darn awesome. And we'll have a lot of folks that will be moving on to regionals. I think we have probably 7 of our 14 wrestlers. I think I got the wrestlers on here. We have 14 weight classes.
14 weight classes, 7 going.
7 going, which is phenomenal. And we won Jeremy, last name, McGuigan. First, he's a senior, first year wrestling. His record's 41-6. And he was the district champion. First year wrestling. So it's a great story. Moving on, another great story, Rob. We'll talk about it more next meeting, but just to let you, as a part of our goal, superintendent's goal was to go after the gold for PASBO's facilities award, which requires a tremendous amount of work and research on our own part. If you saw the book that we submitted, it was about that thick, and we were gold. One of very few districts in the state, and Rob's got that opportunity to go out to Pittsburgh to pick up that award, right? When's that?
March 17th.
March 17th. So we got to check on that goal, which is a very important thing. We've come a long way with our facilities due to your support in the past and having the financial resources to address that.
Congratulations.
Yes, congratulations, and well deserved. Thank you.
And other than that, it completes the superintendent's report. Please take some time to read it. There's a lot of activities. One of the neat things about having a communications director, he takes most of the things from the superintendent's report, knows what our superintendent's goals are, finds the activities out there, and writes a story. So that a lot of those things track as we're moving along, and he's sharing them periodically with his report out to the community and to all our friends.
Give a budget presentation.
Yeah, I got that, Jeff.
Well, he's reminding me to remind you.
Well, I'm done. You're up.
2 minutes, right? Minute 30. So tonight I'm presenting a modified presentation from the one that I did last month in finance. It doesn't get into all the nitty-gritty details. It's going to be a little bit more high level. If you're interested in all the details, we do have it all out on the website. We can also present to you and answer questions in the finance committee if you want to come to a future one, or submit any questions to Dr. Harner, and we'll try to get some answers to you. Tonight I'm going to focus a little bit more closely on a 1.5% tax increase. In the finance committee, we did review the details on the 0%, a 1.5%, and a 3%. I think we want to go to the next slide. When we develop a preliminary budget, we're always developing it without all the information. I have a list here, I'm not going to go through all of it. One of them that I always like to highlight, though, is we develop this before the state tells us what we're actually going to get. So the numbers that we have in there are projections. And I do want to remind the board, because he opted out of the Act 1 exceptions, there is no vote on this tonight. We'll continue to provide updates every month. The next vote would actually be in April on the proposed final, which is typically the administration's recommendation, and the final can be as early as May or in June. I'm not going to go through all the budget terminology. This is more for anybody that's interested in the public, or if you're not familiar with it. We are capped at a 3% tax increase. The Act 1 this year was 2.6. However, Quakertown qualified for what's called adjusted Act 1, which is 3%. It's based on our relative wealth compared to the state. We have qualified the last couple of years, but we don't qualify every year. I believe about 60% of the time we've qualified in the last 10 years or so. So the primary cost drivers this school year are the normal primary cost drivers. Salaries, which you'll see up there, which account for the contractual increases for all of our staff. We also have included 2 additional FTEs, which are specifically to address any emerging or mandated needs. And this was a conversation we had in finance. Although they would be in the budget, if it makes it all the way through to the end with those in there, the administration would actually not advertise and hire any staff until we came back to the board and presented what that would look like in needs that would be supporting that hiring. The other large budget cost driver is our benefits. The benefits are comprised of the healthcare, Social Security, and PSERS. The big one there is the healthcare. We did get a second look, which is the second cost projection from the healthcare consortium. It's not accounted for in this budget. It will be accounted for next month, but it actually went up from the first look, which is unusual. We did have, over the last 6 months, a high number of high cost claims or claimants, which drove the number actually up and not down. So we're looking at an additional % increase, which equates to about $80,000 more in expenditures for that. And PSERS, and that's the net number, because we do receive 50% back in subsidy, is driven by the increase in salaries and the increase in the PSERS number, which has steadied a little bit, but is still quite high, over 34%. Some additional cost drivers: professional services, transportation. I did run on the board last time. This is driven by the addendum that we signed with Libby to get some of those communication systems on, and also to try to increase some of our drivers' rates. There's a significant shortage of bus drivers, not just locally, but nationally, and we are starting to see that locally here. The 90 project, we will be going out to market in the next 2 months on the last bond issuance, which is $6.6 million to complete the 90 project, so that's at $270,000. And the tech school budget increased about 8.4%, or $281,000 over last year. Just so everybody knows, our contribution to the tech school is about $4.1 million. What I don't have in here, but will be discussed in more detail next month, the tech school is also looking at doing a renovation project. Our contribution to cover the cost would be about $250,000. So that would be coming from capital. It would not be part of the general budget, but we would be expected to, if it's officially approved by the JOC and this board, to cut that check to the tech school for next year. This is just some more information on the positions. I'm not going to go into more detail than I already discussed. We would only be bringing that back to the board if we found that we needed those, and we would have that conversation at that time. This is just a for those who don't know what that means, we pay claims. So if you go to the doctor and you need surgery and it costs $50,000, we pay the $50,000. We simply use an insurance carrier as a third-party administrator to actually administer the plans for us. And that's true for every district in the healthcare consortium. So the total expenditures in our budget from this year to last year to this year is $4.8 million. It's a little deceiving because that includes approximately $2 million that we're going to be using from the proceeds from the sale to schools to pay for some of the United project. So if you subtract that, our operating increase over last year is $2.9 million, which is approximately 2.5%. So it is below even the standard Act 1 index. We will continue to try to whittle that down a little bit where we think we can, retirements, resignations, but we don't capture those until we officially receive that information from staff. This is busy. It's on the website if you want to take a look at it in detail. The circled number there that you can't see is the projected decline in enrollment for next year that Nancy M puts out every year, and it's 95 is the number. It's pulling up there for you to see. So although our enrollment is projected to continue to decline, there is no recommendation at this time from the administration to reduce any FTEs. That would be a conversation that would be a later date if that trend continues to go down as part of the redistricting committee's conversations.
I'd just like to make a comment. If you look in the out years, go back one slide, please. Right there in the out years, the number that will go down another 400 students, and that is likely about 20 FTEs in classroom teachers, roughly, and to have I just want to plant the seed in every board member's mind that we need to have a strategy that we're right-sized, or in the next couple of years we won't have the financial resources to fund that, and we don't want to be in another position like we were a couple of years ago. And just planting that seed for you to think about what your personal position is and what the board's guidance and philosophy for us. Our approach for this year going into next year, if it's in a specific certified area like a science that requires chemistry or physical science, biology, something like that, we need to have that replacement there. But for something else, in the short term. But as we look at redistricting, the issues, a lot of things in the future, we need to have your thoughts, your guidance back to us on how we do it, because we don't want to be gone in 4 years, 5 years from now, sitting with a budget that we cannot handle. We have a structural deficit, and we've hired people to replace people, and now we have to let them go. Okay, Zach.
Yeah, just blowing up those numbers a little bit, if you go to the bottom line, from 2012-13 through the projection of 2024-25, the reduction in students is about 1,000 students. Next slide. So this slide's a little busy too, but the important information on here is highlighted with that blue arrow. Lynn Routson, the finance director, put together 7 scenarios. It's every scenario from 0% to 3%, which is what the district capped in terms of the tax increase in 0.5% increments. So the information on the left are the 3 options that we already reviewed at the finance committee: a 0, 1.5, and a 3. And then obviously we added the additional tax increase numbers on the right there, so you can see what they look like. The number highlighted with the blue arrow is what I always refer to as the operational deficit. So the red numbers above that are the actual deficit, but that's incorporates one-time expenditures. We focus more on the operational number, which is highlighted in the second red row. So at a 1.5%, the operational deficit is at a $1.5 million deficit. And I state this every year, the last couple of years. Where we typically feel comfortable coming in is somewhere between that 1 million and 1.5 would be like the absolute upper threshold of where we would be comfortable in terms of a deficit, because we normally make up a lot of that throughout the year through good fiscal management, attrition, some of our line items that we have to be conservative on because we don't know what's going to happen throughout the year, and we try to come back with some money, putting back some money into the fund balance. Above that 1.5 million is where we get a little less comfortable. And then obviously everything in between there.
Quick question.
Yeah.
I noticed the projected fund balance, 24 million.
How much of that is accounted for? So anything above 8%, we put towards capital. Everything from 8% down is not accounted for. And that's
8% of the 24 million?
8% of our operating budget, I'm sorry. So I'll show you, let's go to the next slide if you don't mind. We actually have some of that information on the next slide. So this next slide is a little more detail on the 1.5%. If you actually, it's hard to see on the slide up there, but of that 24 million, unassigned is just under 12 million. Committed fund balance is just over 12 million.
Thank you.
Yep. And then the rest of the information in this slide is just what I went over a second ago. What we focus on is the operational number, not the one-time use of fund balance. Now, where you got to be careful though, if a one-time use of fund balance gets too high, that is also a concern because that captures the attention of your credit rating. Moody's would not like to see a very large one-time usage. This slide we go over every year. It's what the impact would be on the average taxpayer. And what we do is we only focus on the homestead. This doesn't account for any commercial properties. So at a 1.5% tax increase, the average homestead would see a $60 increase in their tax bill. So because of the Homestead Farmstead Act, the actual tax increase may be slightly different than that, depending on whether you got a little bit more of a credit, a little bit less of a credit from year to year, but on average about a $60 increase for the average home. And that's based on about a market value, about $250,000 home. That's not what the home would actually sell for because there hasn't been a reassessment in this county for quite some time, so that's what the current market value in terms of what the county says it is. This is another busy slide. The only thing I'll focus on is what's highlighted in orange. At a 1.5% tax increase, this is what we're showing as our deficit in the outward years. Although we're showing a deficit, what you'll notice is it's consistent, so it's not rising, which is always good. And we do put this together very conservatively. So when we do projections for the outward years, I do project or assume that every line item is going to go up at least a little bit. Because we need to be conservative because there's a lot of unknowns. And this also assumes that taxes would be increased each year after next year at a 2.6% tax increase. So again, we were a little conservative. We didn't go up to the 3% number just in case we don't qualify for the adjusted act one in the future.
Can I ask how accurate were these projections, based, like the ones that we've done previously to the actuals?
I can put something together for the next finance committee. Typically, because I said we put this together conservatively, and to be honest, in education 5 years out, so many things are going to happen between now and 5 years. But just in a 1 year period, we can put something together. For example, this year we were showing a deficit, but projecting a surplus. A lot of that was due to the attrition that we got after the budget was completed. And obviously that's the way you want to go if you're off. You want to be off where you're putting into fund balance. So we're projecting to be off about 1.5%, or actually one little under that actually.
I had another question then. When you were talking about where you typically like to be, in that, 1 million to 1.5 being the top $1 million range. If last year's budget was 113 million and this year's is 119 million, I mean, could you say that that's a 5% difference? So then could you, build that 5% into where that comfort range would be, which would also give us an extra $75,000 a headroom?
I mean, logically that would make sense. A couple of things I want to point out though. The 119 million is an inflated number because it accounts for that $2 million that we're going to use from the sale of schools. So I would consider more of 117 million. Okay. I mean, not to make a small difference there, but that's why typically we say $1 million. This year actually, the last couple of years we've been a little bit over that. So I'm comfortable somewhere in that range. Would be fine.
This is an important slide.
So I put this slide together because these are the things that we currently do not know, and that aren't a 1-year impact, but could impact the district for multiple years. I won't read all of them. Obviously we have contract negotiations coming up. The districting committee is going to start up next year, and a lot of big conversations around that. With some of our buildings, I think I have Quakertown Elementary as part of that conversation. The other one that could be costly, we're going to start getting into some of the details, I think actually next month, with the start time committees, the transportation costs associated with the two-tiered system. The reason I have that on there is those are operational costs. Whatever that increase is, we're going to see that every single year, and it's going to be compounded by whatever our contractual increase is with our transportation provider. Some of the other ones are a little less important. You always got to point out future economic conditions. Things are good right now, so the real estate market is good, so we're getting transfer taxes, earned income taxes are up, so those things are all good, but that could easily change if the economy changes.
Is it possible for you to do one of these 5-year projections for us that has this upcoming year at 0%, and then you do the rest of the future years as you've done here?
Yep, we actually have that. That'll be on the website tomorrow morning.
Okay.
So we did those at the last finance committee, and they're actually up there already from the last finance. Today we just focused on 1.5%. Next slide is just what our budget calendar looks like for the rest of the year. We'll continue to give board updates, so please feel free to come to finance where we actually get into some of the nitty-gritty details of all of this. And then the last slide is just if there's any questions or if we have any board guidance moving forward for the administration, so we know what your philosophy is and goals are over the next couple of months.
Might be premature to ask. Should we wait until we get to the committee reports to ask for the finance committee recommendation?
Yeah, you want to handle that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we don't really have a recommendation. We waited for this presentation. We talked about it. You know, there's a couple things that there's a couple factors you know to really think about when you're talking about long-term strategy to understand this budget. And I think one has to be, you know, your biggest driver in any budget in any business is people, right? And so when we know that there's going to be less enrollment over the course of the next 5 years, it means that you'll need theoretically less teachers so long as you're balancing the class size out as well, right? So there's not going to be, if you're saying that there's 30 teachers that will retire in the next 5 years, I don't know that number to be true. I would estimate that, you know, you can think about 20, using it somewhere in the 20 neighborhood. So you're going to have money coming out of your operating cost, even though drivers will continue to go up, based simply on attrition over time.
That's
so
a good
long
point.
as you don't backfill those positions, right?
So let me make sure I'm understanding correctly for everyone else as well. The projections that we have, the 5-year projections, is based off of the staff that we have now, but that it could change based on attrition and lower enrollment in the future.
So long as, and again, it's the accuracy of the predictions and you know, the lower enrollment, lower class, you know. So I think you have to balance a couple things out. You know, what are we at class size? Where do we want to be? First question. And again, that's over time. And then the second question is, you know, if you can make a prediction based on historical data on you know, the number of resignations or people that retire, again, it's a risk because if those don't retire, then you're going to have to fund that. And there are some pressing issues, right? So we talked about the 2 FTEs that we're going to build into the budget being, you know, important to stabilizing our schools, you know, from different aspects, right? So we talk about teachers, we looked at bands. You know, this now we're talking about psychiatry. You know, adding another counselor or something along those lines as needed, because those positions are getting you know, bandwidth is down greatly. Yeah. So I think it's we heard it for the first time. I know that you know, I can tell you that we asked them to trim all the fat out of the budget. I've asked them again at the finance committee meeting this time to go back and look again. But I think it's sort of hedging our bet. There's a portion of it that is going to be a little bit of, you know, what do we feel is going to happen in the next 5 years, and will we be able to close that deficit? You know, what I don't want to see is us, you know, get to a point. I probably won't be sitting on this board, but they're talking about issues with programs. You know, that's not something I think we want, any of us want. But if there's ever a time to push the issue on the taxes, I think we got this year to go.
Yeah.
Just want to answer you guys one question. The projections hold the FTE steady. It does build in some attrition, but not attrition from eliminating the FTE, just keeping the teacher at the top of the scale and the salary of the teacher you would be bringing in. So that's the level of attrition it captures.
That's got to be really tough to estimate because you have people rising at the same time.
We look at it just globally is typically what we do. What's been the average increase over the last 3 to 5 years? So I think, Keith, the main point that I would reiterate is it's the level of risk that you're willing to assume in the outward years.
Remind me, what is the recommended percentage for fund balance?
So our our financial advisors recommend to keep about 2 months of operating expenses. So for us, that'd be around $19 million. If you dip below that, it's not that you can't manage, but it does have an impact potentially on your credit rating. So if we needed to borrow in the future, or if there were refinancing options, those types of things become either more expensive or less lucrative if you're refinancing in those situations.
Potentially.
And again, I think the other key is to understand that there are drivers that are outside of our control, and there are drivers that are inside our control. But you know, if the we decide to change start times, that could be a several $100,000 hit. You know, so you can't have your cake and eat it too. We have to figure out what we want to do in the best interest of trying to manage both sides of the equation. And I think it's a difficult call.
You got to think about the wild card of me too. That's going to ask you for team time back and stuff too. So.
No, that's not happening.
These questions, you know.
Chris, he rubber stamps everything.
Oh.
We got another round up here.
He's just sitting there. He hasn't said anything. You haven't said anything.
And you've been quiet.
You have been.
I'm surprised.
The presentation presented essentially 5 or 6 different budgets because you did have that one slide which gave us a scenario for everything from 0 to 3. So we have a lot of things to look at. However, the final few slides presented facts as if it was a 1% increase.
1.5.
Yeah.
1.5.
I'm sorry, 1.5.
So to clarify, there are 7 different scenarios for taxing. We didn't make any changes to the expenditure levels of anything in any of those.
Correct. My point is that the administration is preparing a budget regardless of the tax increase, if any, that's provided. You're just doing your due diligence and coming up with the greatest budget you can and letting us know that if we choose one tax scenario over the other, this is our liability. In the end, is it safe to say that the administration is not, at this time, actually recommending a particular tax increase? Is that a fair assessment?
Yes.
Okay. And is it also a fair assessment to say that the board as a whole at this time does not need to come to a consensus as to what we would recommend today?
I think, and Zach and I talked about this, I think it's important for them to have the guidance so that they can go back as they're building the budget. So, I mean, I think the ask is, what's the flavor of the group? And is it to keep telling them to push it 0%? They're going to have to go back and do a lot of homework, and that's okay. But it's really kind of what we want, not, that they're looking for direction from us. I think am I correct?
Yes.
That would be accurate, yes.
Okay, so
like leaving them hanging between 0 and 3 is not what they want. They want us to say like 0.
I think that's what Ron's looking for.
Drawing.
well, no. Again, my question simply, I mean, we have the preliminary final budget is April. The second meeting in April, that's the preliminary final budget.
The proposed final budget is in April.
Okay.
Yes, there's still opportunities to make changes after that, but large changes would be very difficult because it will leave us very little time to try to figure that out.
But again, you're going to be working daily. You're going to be getting new numbers daily. You're going to have different numbers. If we ask you to wait till March, you'd have different numbers. If we asked you to wait till April, you'd have different numbers then.
And in June or end of May when you approve the budget, so you could approve a final, have the first reading of the budget at 1.5, but then come in at the final reading at 0%. And we'll have more of those unknowns as knowns.
And again, my question then comes back to, and it sounded like the answer to this question is yes. Do we need to take just a general poll of the board and find out who's in favor of 1.5, which would be the presentation, or something else, which would be anything we chose to throw out? Is that what we have to do as we sit here right now?
Yeah, so the way I looked at it was, and I have this thought that every year that I've been here, and you guys have been here longer than me, we've contributed money to the fund balance, which is why it's healthy today. But every year you went in the budget with a $1 to $1.5 million operating deficit, and then at the end of the year still contributed to the fund balance. So essentially, you might be at 2. I mean, what would we put in the fund balance this year? Not aside from the NIDIC.
So this current year, the current projection that Linus put together is about 1.5 million. By the time we get to the end of this year, what we'd be putting in the fund balance.
Yeah. So when you think about it from a budgetary standpoint, you started out last year with a $1.5 million deficit. That's eliminated, plus a surplus of 1.5 million, which is 3. So we're talking about 2.5 today. You see what I'm picking up? You see what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. The math is clear, but also to make sure you want to make sure you're planning for a tighter budget, not to cut program, but a tighter budget, which may cause us to slow down the flow, the program flow of resources. Say for Dr. Hoffman's area, academic programs and purchasing materials, which is an annual level cost.
But we'd have to get more creative to get exactly.
I'm really not sure why people are continuously feeding me numbers when my question is simply, are we or are we not going to give them direction now as to what % tax increase?
I'd love to see a 0% tax increase. I don't know about anybody else on the board.
I'm with you.
I'm right there.
The question is not whether that you want to see that. The question is, come June, what are you going to vote for?
Well,
that's the question.
Ron, I think at this point, because we weren't all at the committee, I've seen what Zach put up on the screen. I don't have the other information in front of me, so you could ask me all day right now. I wouldn't be able to tell you a good answer sitting here right this minute. I would want, a day to look over the information.
But again, I'm sitting here looking at the administration and the chairman of the finance committee who just told us they want a recommendation today.
Sir, if I make it simpler, you would like to see what it would cost us, what we would the impact on our funding, our recommended expenditures for next year, where we would go in, and there is no fact, but it would be going after, excuse me, sir, you may disagree, but
put $1 million away last year, $1.5 million. There's fat somewhere.
Well, that was going to be my point. Is just my assessment, and this just only counts for my assessment. And the reason why I think we would be able to pull off a 0 or 1.5 at the most is because we always save money. You guys are great at doing that. The projections are always, they're great, but they're typically pretty conservative, and I think that's a better way to be because we do always want to come up above. And then if you look down the road, I think we will have less staff. And I know we have a lot of variables here. I know we have contracts and things like that, but I think if we had a 0% tax increase, which is something that this community has not seen in
its history.
It's history. Like our community, 3/4 of the citizens here do not have kids in the district. Is that right? I mean, the funding formula for Pennsylvania is awful, just in my opinion, and it does put a big burden on a lot of folks who have, their fixed incomes. They don't have we hear time and time again people coming up here saying, they're gonna lose their house. They feel like they never own their home, and when we're talking about things like the $1 million baseball fields, please don't hate me, baseball people. I'm thinking, what about the lady who can't pay her light bill? I would much rather see her get a break than someone get millions of dollars worth of a baseball field. So that is just my 2 cents, and so I don't know.
I have the consensus, I think, ma'am.
Okay.
We're going to do the legwork, and we'll do the what it will look like for the next.
We're gonna get a lot of emails from baseball people.
Thank you.
I have a feeling.
Is that fair? Yeah.
I like baseball.
That's why I wanted it here, because I wanted everybody's opinion, not just.
Yeah, I wish I had seen all of the projections, and I didn't. I've seen the 0, the 1.5, and the 3, but there was, 7, you said now, projections up there? 8, something like that?
So it's 0.5, 1,
Right.
1.5, which is the half percent.
If I had seen that, I would
Yeah,
feel
but
like I was
think
better.
it's more than that. I think you got,
prepared.
I think the digestive point is to go back and kind of really figure out these votes on tax increase multiply year over year, and everybody knows that. And it's really trying to figure out what that looks like in the future. This vote for a one-time taxing, 0% tax increase could be great. It might just affect the future, but the future could look different depending on enrollment and things like that. So I just think
I get that, and I sit here and I would love to have a 0% tax increase. I really would, but if it's not something that's feasible, then that's something that
The way that
I
helped
still know.
me understand this was tax increase compound every year. So, when you go up a little bit, you're now taxed on that new higher amount. Well, 0 tax increases sort of work in the opposite direction. You don't get that money compounding every year, so it's sort of like losing money every year going forward.
We lose $60 this year, and then we lose $6 next year, and then we lose $3 the year after, because the way the compounding works. So I was just trying to help. Sorry.
I'm with you, Dave.
If you'd like to see a good example of compounding, I'd like to ask the administration, when they come back with these projections, we showed a slide that showed that the average house payer would pay an additional $60. I'm assuming that's an annual increase in taxes over the.
The $60 would be that would be the average.
I'd like to see
household.
how much we've raised their taxes in 10 years.
That's a
I
good
mean,
point.
we keep bragging about, just $60. Okay.
I don't want to put that in writing anywhere.
You see my point? I mean, let's see what
Right.
we talk to ourselves. This revenue is lost if we can compound it. Well, let's see what it's costing compounded.
I just want to add one point.
2.5 of that.
When I talk about the level of risk, when we talked about putting money into the fund balance the last couple of years, that's primarily driven by attrition. So the salaries and benefit savings for people that leave. The number of staff that have resigned or retired the last couple of years has been much higher than we've been accustomed to, because when we closed the school, when we downsized, that's where a lot of that came from. And to Keith's point, if I were going to put together a projection of how many people are going to retire in the next couple of years, it would be much lower than the average of the last few, because a lot of those individuals have gone. So that's where I'm saying you're assuming some level of risk.
But it sounds like you're coming in
nutritional
with
savings.
a projection of less than what could
I
be
don't think we're going to have the same level of
Right.
nutritional savings in the next couple of years as we've seen in the last couple. So if we came under $2 million under expenditures, the last two, it's going to be less than that. Would be my expectation.
But to that end,
Yeah.
I think it's also important to understand that it was the savings was in the difference between the top paid salary and an entry level salary.
Correct.
Right. So, but in the future, that if you eliminate that, if you don't need as many people, you
Correct.
eliminate the
Absolutely.
entirety of the salary. So it's complex. When I don't think it's easy to think.
And
about
every
it.
year you need to come to the table here and give us the guidance, because that's going to be incredibly important for keeping a balanced budget as our contractual obligations increase, the cost of doing business increases, whatever the local revenue flow is, etc.
Yeah, alright, sounds like
We have the guidance.
alright, great. And just one last final note, I think we really probably need to focus some on the future of our FTEs, how we're gonna handle that with, you know, if the enrollment does continue to decline, to your point earlier, adding some additional staff in places, and just how we're gonna handle that and somehow put that in the forecast. I don't know if that's possible, but that would, I think, be helpful as well. Alright, next on the agenda is our student representative, and I am so sorry, it's like almost 9 o'clock. We should probably put you guys on here a lot sooner. But Emily, please take the stage.
Hi everyone, I'm Emily Masseri. I'm just going to quickly review things that have been happening in our school recently. And I know Dr. Connor recently touched on this, but the wrestling team won the District 1 AAA championship. Zach Borzio placed 4th in his weight class. Dominic Patalco and Vinny Mysterio placed 3rd. Todd McGann, Kyle Miller, and Zach Lewis placed 2nd, and Jeremy McGoodyan placed 1st. Track and field also sent qualifying athletes to the new champs, including Becca Hickey for the 3,000 meter race and Trevor Gray for the 60 meter race. And the swim team is sending Tyler and Caleb Einhoff, David Piper, and Stella to districts this year. Our cheerleading team competed at nationals again in Florida, and winter sports are currently wrapping up and spring sports will be starting next week. Quakertown also just recently held a college signing on February 20th with 7 different sports represented at the signing, and this is a record high number. And our school also recently had a talent show run by student council to raise funds for Australian wildlife. And the winners of this was 1st place Lily Cartonis for singing, 2nd place Amelia Cianciola and Esta Ekpe for singing a duet, and 3rd place Maddie Barlow and Erica Greco for hip hop dancing. Quakertown is also holding a spikeball tournament for SCA this Friday, and Minitown recently held a dodgeball tournament February 13th to raise money for pediatric cancer. And TSA competed in regionals earlier this month with several wins, and many of the students qualifying for states in April, and they're currently working on projects over the next month to hopefully place at states and move on to nationals. Also, our school designated a hallway for Black History Month, which was decorated by NHS. And in regards to academics, NHS students are offering their services to tutor other students in need. And teachers are also partaking in learning labs in which they go and visit other classrooms to learn about other teachers' styles and methods, and hopefully incorporate that into their own classrooms. And right now, juniors are focusing on college searches, and seniors are committing to colleges. For example, I have applied and been accepted in West Point's Summer Leadership Experience program, and many of the guidance counselors have been helping us and me through this process. And lastly, we all just selected our courses for next year, which is exciting. So thank you, and I hope you guys have a good night.
Would you sign up for, if I may ask, would you sign up for next year?
What did I sign up for next year? For the summer program? I'm first session, June 6th to June 13th. I'll be at West Point.
I'm talking about next year, I'm sorry.
Oh, my
You're doing the
courses.
internship, did you apply for that?
I'm doing, medical career pathways.
Okay.
Yes. So I'll be taking, my other 4 classes will be AP and all be core classes.
So did you say you were accepted into West Point?
I got accepted into a summer program.
To the summer program. Tell me about that. I'm not very familiar with that.
It's like a week of training, so basically I'll be living like the cadets do there.
Yeah.
So I'll have to wake up, do PT, and then they'll teach me like shooting, and I'll have to sit through some of their classes.
Do you hope to one day attend West Point?
Yes.
Interesting.
No, Dr. Harder likes that.
I know. Well, my dad went there, my older sister is there now, and a few years ago I was so against it. I don't know why, I just didn't think the military was for me, but I had a change of heart.
Do these summer programs then exempt you from having to do basic if you do go there?
No.
Oh no, they get you from day one. But we had three of our students, you all met here as student reps, Kyle Reinhoff, Sam Bart, and Jake Lewis, all presented here and talked and shared as a student rep. They went last summer to the summer leadership, and then I guess 2 of the 3 didn't apply. They just wanted to check it out. And so it's a great way to see if this is for them, and they also get a chance to be looked at by the academy, and I'm sure they make a checklist of things. Can they do PT, the physical fitness piece? Yeah, how are they getting along with their peers and all that kind of stuff.
It's
Great.
Yeah,
Congrats.
Thank you.
All the academies have this program, just so you know. So it's kind of cool for me.
Of course, I know you're just loving it over here, right?
I am.
You're really cool with that mask.
No pictures, Gary.
Only Facebook.
Only Facebook. Well, as a I'm a veteran. I'm an Army veteran, and I always love seeing women representing, and as veterans. So congratulations, and I wish the best of luck for you. And officers, the way to go. Trust me. I'll tell you all about that later sometime. I'm winking over here. Okay. I was enlisted. I wasn't so lucky. I was digging trenches while the officers were playing cards. No offense.
Tell me to dig ditches.
With e-tools, no less. All right. So the next item on the agenda, we're going to do our standing committee reports, and Mrs. Weed is not with us tonight, and so Ms. Edwards is going to give us that report. Oh, you have it. Oh, Mr. Reimers. I am. Excuse me.
I mean, if you really want her to do it,
I mean,
whatever.
you didn't let me know. But
I have it right here. Anyway, the policy committee met on the 13th, as we mentioned before. We actually looked at a couple of policies just to kind of update and bring them into line with some of the current language and statutes, and to make sure that they were consistent. So things like policy 222, the use and possession of tobacco products. We changed some of the language in there just to make sure that it was, like I said, up to date and things like that. We also changed a little bit in we suggested a change in these policies, 227, where we changed some language talking about contraband and what can happen to the contraband, as far as who can get it after it's been confiscated and things like that. Basically making it so that it's in line with the statute. For example, you can't buy a tobacco product unless you're over 21. So the current policy said that anybody who has a vaping device would be able to get the device back at the end of the year or whenever. We actually suggested changing that to someone that's over 21, just to be consistent with the law. We also talked about disposal of obsolete and outdated district property. Basically the stuff that's trash that's going to get thrown away, and Ms. Edwards had suggested changing the policy to include language that specifically outlined what to do with that broken stuff that we just can't use anymore. We also talked a little bit about the attendance at school events or public attendance at school events, where we updated some of the language to talk about what would happen with disruptive people at the events. And then we also asked if the language could be amended to include to say something to the effect of the administration or the event sponsor would decide if the screening should occur at the event. So those are some of the policies we just changed, and it was just wording changes. We also talked about policy 115, where it's the vocational education policy. Somebody had suggested we look at that because of a concern with the number of people that had voted on it. Ms. Edwards shared that there is also additional updated language from the Pennsylvania School Board Association regarding students with disabilities, and that notice to parents and protection from child abuse that is provided for us to consider, so we looked at that. And we also talked about the desire to kind of monitor this policy as it stands right now to decide if, as we're going forward, there's an issue that needs to be changed. And then we also talked about a suggestion to include a minimum age requirement in there. This was at a first reading, so I don't know that we actually need to talk about anything beyond just the fact that that's what we talked about, right,
I don't think we included it in for first reading, right?
The committee's direction was to prepare it for first reading, and
Okay.
so
But that
it is
wasn't
in
the
there.
first reading, right?
Tonight is the first reading, so it wouldn't be voted on or approved until the next meeting.
Right.
So there's still time to make adjustments to the language.
Right, that's what I meant. So
Between
this
now and
wasn't-
then, right.
this
There's
wasn't-
nothing that's in it that is an action item tonight, other than, the policies Mr. Reimers discussed moving forward to first reading.
I just wanted
And
to.
that's- I was going to say that's all that we.
Excellent job.
Thank you.
Good report. I just wanted to make sure, I know I just overheard Dr. Hoffman, we were discussing earlier about some scenarios that I just want to make sure you guys can act on the age thing to make sure that we're not infringing on any of those students, the kindergarten students that we mentioned before. One other thing I did want to thank the administration for is, and let the board know, is that our ARs are now going to be included in the reports. And the way this is going to happen, and they've been in here, but I don't know that everyone's been clear about this. Anytime the administration makes changes to an AR, it's going to be here, and if there's no objections, it's going to pass without any issue. Should there be an issue, then we will discuss it as a board. Cool. All right. I know that we talked about the finance committee, the finance, but Mr. Makuchi, if you'd like to give us an update.
We actually had a very good meeting. We had a presentation today by the Fox Tech School of Teresa Olflich. She's the financial director of the tech school, and she presented the 2021 budget. Just for everybody's knowledge, Quakertown contributes they're looking to increase our contribution by 8.4% over last year, which equates to about $281,000. For the record, we contribute $4.1 million to the tech school annually. The tech school is also working on building a building renovation project that is estimated at about $800,000. If approved, the district's contribution is approximately $250,000. We talked about the school budget, but there is some more to know. The administration reviewed the budget with us. There were some changes in revenues and projections, which Zach talked about. The two major changes in the school budget was a reduction in revenue stemming from the governor's budget presentation, and that difference is approximately $223,000. We also heard two presentations, one from Dr. Hoffman, the other from Joe Kuzo. The technology budget proposed will remain relatively flat. The OTL budget is projecting a slight increase. We expect that number to come down once the final quotes are received from the curriculum suppliers. We had the second look at medical that Zach mentioned earlier, which was 1% over our first look. The NIDIC project is doing well. From a financial standpoint, they're well within their budget. We have about $1.7 million remaining of the contingencies. We did discuss briefly on freezing millage rates for preserved property. This was something that's been talked about several times in the Finance Committee. We held on that discussion, and we will continue to have that in the future. And the last thing was the RFP for the district auditor. The administration stated that there's a 3-year contract with the district's independent auditor. We're at 3 years now, correct?
Yeah, we just expired.
Okay. So the next question was, do we change or put this out to an RFP? Our decision was to keep it for one additional year.
I believe the recommendation was just to extend on and do an RFP after that, at that point.
That's about it.
Great. Thank you.
So I do want to make one recommendation for the Finance Committee. As we talk about these budget things, it might be a good idea, as many of us can be there to hear it real time. Maybe we can focus a little bit more simply on this. I know we have a couple other agenda items for the next one as well, but this project over.
Budget season.
Sound good?
Thank you, sir. All right, moving on to our facilities committee, Mr. Spear.
All right, we met on February 6th, and I'll go through, there's a lot of things here, but I'll try and go as quick as I can. The first thing we discussed was the baseball stadium, with the possibility of Quakertown taking over the Memorial Park Stadium. It's not a whole lot better than our stadium. It's still very wet, so we are going to get, we're going to continue to have Boucher and James give us more data on whether or not they can get the field drier just by adding some draining. We also discussed a artificial turf field there. It doesn't really seem very viable because of the floodplain that it's in. And we also discussed possibly looking into the field if Memorial Stadium doesn't work out, the field across the street, across Mill Street, which would be the Connie Mack field, yeah. So we don't really have any answers. We're going to continue to look into it. Obviously, don't want to spend millions of dollars because I don't think it'll get approved. But maybe if we can find a solution that's not so many millions of dollars, we can get the baseball team playing more games in the spring. We also had a presentation from the ECS, which is the district's environmental consultant, and they went over all of the things that they do for the district, mainly dealing with the asbestos and dangerous dangerous issues like lead in the water, and they basically went over all of what they do and how they even, with mercury and lead in the drinking water, bloodborne pathogens, they even do right to know creation for documents and stuff. The real thing that was brought up though was about Tohickon Valley and whether or not that building was still being monitored while it wasn't in use, and they assured us that it was, so they put everybody's mind at ease, and I feel a little bit better about that too. The IU had their fire at their Upper Bucks campus, which was the former Quakertown Christian Academy. And in that time, they've been using 5 of our classrooms at the 6th grade center. We moved some people around, and it seems to have worked out well for them. The duration is expected to be 1 month. I'm not sure if that's on track anymore, Dr. Arner or Dr. Hoffman.
We'll find it out before the meeting's out, but I believe we're within. You have an answer.
Yeah, I did talk to Rebecca Malmus last week when I was at the Healthcare Consortium, and they thought they would be gearing up to exit mid-March. That wasn't a promise or guaranteed by any means, but that was their expectation at the time.
Okay. And the NITIG project is going on, still on schedule, still on budget. We did go over the vacating of Tohickon Valley and the moving in and the cleanup schedule for the NITIG project and how that's all going to work out with the timing of when we can move teachers in, when they can move equipment in, when they can move students in, and it's going to be tight, but it looks like it'll work. Tonight we'll be voting on a field groomer bid, and this field groomer was presented last year to the Finance Committee, and it's a part of the equipment requests for the facilities, and the costs, I guess, are already built into this year's budget. Correct. For that? Okay, so we will be voting on that tonight. There's also, I believe we'll be voting on this contract for the active screens that are going to go into NITIG, those big touchscreen things, and the mounting hardware so they can pull them down and move them back up. There's two contracts there. One of them's for $136,250. That's for the screens. And the other one is for $24,372. That's for the mounting hardware for them. So these are part of the NITIG budget. So everything should be okay there. Oh, and Zach wants to add one thing.
The other thing we discussed was the actual furniture purchase, which is on tonight. We did receive proposals. They weren't quite as clean as we thought it would be, so we're still going through all of them. I can't wait though until the next board meeting to get approval. So what we have on the agenda tonight is a resolution that authorizes me to execute that as long as it's within budget, within the next hopefully couple of days. So that's on there tonight as well.
So you're probably not going to go to IKEA and buy all those things then?
No, there are more firms than you can imagine that specialize in school furniture. So.
Unless you volunteer to put them all together. And that's it for the custodial parts.
The leadership.
That's it.
I would like to say I'm thrilled that we, as an elected person, I'm thrilled to see our community come together and offer this space to the school that needed it. Who would have known having an extra school building could have came in handy. Womp womp.
I mean, I'm glad to see that we were able to help in that situation. What was it again that started the fire? It was
It was an electrical fire that had started. Fortunately, it started simmering before the end of the school day, but it was right after the end of the work day there. And it was great teamwork. The IU was hand in glove with us. Rob and his team were in there. I guess it was Saturday, less than 24 hours from the time the fire was. The folks from the IU, Dr. Locke, who used to work here, she runs the early childhood program. She came in with the facilities director, and then Rob and Eric and I met. We were there, and by Sunday, did you start turning wrenches to take things apart? Monday morning, and it was just great. It was great teamwork.
Had to be pretty much stressful environment. I'm sure lots of pressure. So thank you all the staff.
And grateful for our teachers, because we did move some cheese. There were 4 classrooms that we moved.
5 approximately.
That had to be
4, plus
stressful.
we created one out of the library storage room, and out of the faculty workroom.
Any idea on the time frame of what, I guess, how long they're going to be? I'm assuming the rest of the year at least.
No, just about 5-6 weeks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
And moving back in.
All right. Sounds good. Well, thank you for your report. And Mr. Jackson, you got the next 3 if you'd like to take it away.
How is it that my 3 take less than the previous 3 combined? each one.
I'm timing
one
you.
of them,
Let's see.
Yeah.
Put your
my
money where
3
your mouth
combined
is.
will be less than any one of those first 3. I tell you. I'm not going to go too much into the IU fire. We touched on it a lot. Rest assured that the IU is already looking at a more long-term solution. The IU will be relocating, something like as stated before, mid-March. If you look on board docs, you'll see the resolutions passed at the IU and awesome news, which I always include the highlights, lots of fun things going on there. Please look at that at your leisure. That's my IU report. Moving on, legislative report. Always something going on in Harrisburg. The biggest thing in Harrisburg these days is charter school reform. There's a resolution attached to that we're going to discuss a little later that the PSBA has drafted and is asking all school districts to sign on. I won't continue with that right now. It's a little further down. We'll talk about it then. Legislative report, please look at all the stuff included in that report at your leisure. Quakertown Ed Foundation, their meeting was a couple weeks ago on Wednesday morning. Unfortunately, they didn't have a quorum, so nothing was passed, but I do want to highlight that in our fundraising efforts, I want to thank the Levy school bus system, because Mr. Levy was generous enough to give us a $2,500 donation, so kudos to Levy on that one. And that's my reports.
That was good. That was fast. Very concise. Bravo. All right. Moving on to
Gold star.
I'm just saying, I could have gotten through everything if I just said, check it out at your convenience. Mine would have been fast. I didn't know that was a
Fair
option.
point. Fair point. All right, moving on, Mr. Akbana, let's give us the report on the tech school.
The last Upper Bucks County Technical School JOC meeting was February 20th, 2020. We had an executive session where we normally do. We discussed personnel and finance matters. We paid some bills. We took care of some personnel issues. We updated some policy that is up for first reading next month. And all of those policies can be found at your convenience at the Upper Bucks County Technical School website. We had acknowledged many of the great students' achievements that happened over the last 2 months within the Skills USA competitions. We celebrated with cake in the auditorium. There will be the Skills USA PA State Championships in April, and we approved some of our students to go and compete in that challenge, which I believe is in Harrisburg. We also congratulated Student of the Month Brendan Keller from Quakertown. We covered the donation report and showcased. He did bake the cake, actually. Yeah, it was very good. We also covered the donation report and showcased our Ag Tech program this week to the audience. Special thanks, maybe the only time I ever say this, to Craig Stats for coming in and spending time with the school. He came in and signed a proclamation on Act 76, a bill that helps focus on CTE legislation.
You heard there was cake.
Yeah, here, there's cake. The school received grants to replace all our LEDs. We are in the process of transitioning over to them now. We approved the newest calendar for 2021. We are in the process of drafting the budget. We have the 3 sending districts and their business managers working with us as we do that. Discussions of the renovations needed for the Ag Tech program was had. We are looking at further improvements and planning on future roofing replacements in the future years. Breakfast with the Bunny is going to be March 14th from 9 to 11. Kids are just $5, and I think adults were $7 or $8. And then the next JOC meeting is March 19th, 2020 at 8 p.m.
You won't mind that I let Craig know you gave him a little attaboy there, will you?
What was that? Oh, no. Yeah, I saw him at the Q Mart. Thank you myself on Sunday.
All right. I see him at Giant all the time.
I saw him in my neighborhood, but my hair looks crazy, so I didn't go talk to him. But normally I would want to go talk to him. It was early. Yeah. It was the weekend. Anyway, jokes aside. I believe, okay, so I do have a couple of things today for the President's report. One thing that I forgot to mention, I wanted to add on to the policy report is I was doing a little bit of research into how much it would cost for the PSBA to do a policy review, and I did ask them for a quote. So tonight you all are going to be voting on the contract between PSBA and our district, and what they do is a comprehensive review of all of our policies and the ARs, and they really just make sure there's no contradictions or if there's any recommendations on updates to our policies. They do bring that over to us. They give us a first draft, they give us manuals, and the cost for that was a lot less than I thought it was going to be for how thorough it appears that they, the process of what they go into. It's a $6,800 expense. So that is going to be voted on tonight. I just want to mention that. Okay, so the goals committee, I did want to give a quick update about that. I did request that the goals meeting, which it was a slip of the mind when we decided that we were going to be meeting tomorrow, that the administration was not available for tomorrow, and we weren't able to get it into the paper on time either. Now, that being said, we have a meeting, just to try to tighten up on where we are with those things, and so I wanted to get an idea from you guys if you still want to meet tomorrow. We can invite the rest of the board members and then advertise dates for the future where the administration can also join us.
I'm fine either way.
Is that permissible under?
You can't have more than 4 board members there without advertising.
Right. Oh, and now I see what you're saying. So we can't. Okay, so in that case, then what I'll do is get something together to send to all of you to let you take a first look of where we are with the goals.
We could summarize that sheet and
Right.
send that out.
We can clean it up. We have a lot of different ideas about, we're still tightening up on things, but I think it would be helpful for you all to be able to see at least where we are with things and expect that there will be a meeting next month and the following months until we get to a point where we want to vote on those. And I really look forward to the comprehensive plan that's going to take place and help us include some of those ideas in that as well. So look forward to that.
When you're talking about the fact that you have something that you want to distribute to everybody else,
yeah,
Is that something that's been worked on in the past few months or so?
Yes.
Okay, so I would assume the goals committee members were the ones meeting and talking about these things?
Correct.
Okay, so the goals committee has met, correct?
I mean, it's been informal, but yes.
It's been formal enough that you have a draft of something you want to provide to the board to consider.
Somewhat, yes.
That's a little concerning to me. I mean, ask the solicitor, is that not concerning? If the members of the committee, a standing committee, met and have prepared a draft to present to the board for consideration.
As long as only 4 members met, there's no sunshine violation. Clearly, any kind of goals that are adopted must be adopted at a public meeting by a majority of the board. So I'm not sure what your concern is or what the goals are.
I know, and I'm trying not to be petty. I really am. But if
trying.
if you're the goals committee and you're meeting,
I'll let you finish, and then I'll explain to you the reasoning behind it.
but again, I mean, the goals committee was set up as a committee to meet as a public entity. We have a lot of committee meetings, a lot of committees that are 3-member committees. They all meet in public. This is a committee.
So there will be a minimum of 3 or 4 meetings that will take place before we actually vote on there. So there'll be ample opportunity for the public as well as other board members to both give input, and before we decide on this and give their feedback. The reason we decided to do that is because I found that what was taking place in previous meetings was we would leave the meeting and things would be all over the place because you had so many people pulling at you to do things this way, this way, this way. And you'd be there for like 2 hours and you'd leave and nothing would be accomplished. And so I wanted us to get somewhat of a framework first before we presented it to you all to get your feedback, so that it would prevent that from happening. And I do feel like it's been very effective. I think that we've worked really well together. There's still a lot of room for feedback. We're not trying to hide anything. If that were the case, we wouldn't be having 4 public meetings before we were to vote on that. We just wanted to, sometimes it's a little bit easier to hammer out the work when there's fewer people and fewer opinions, just to be honest. I mean, those meetings were super inefficient. We weren't accomplishing a whole lot of anything. It's just my 2 cents.
May I say something from the other half of the goals thing? There are 3 individuals that have to agree with those goals because they have to be consensual. So, if they've met and you have a lot of other public discussions, board discussions, it's not just what I agree to, it's all 3 commission officers. So we as a team have to sit and or individually or collectively and push. They could say no to me and not like the goals and not agree to that in their particular area or whatever. So there's a lot of time to flush things out.
Absolutely.
But now y'all have something concrete to work off of.
That
Everything
was
was
perfect.
philosophy before.
We
which is
spent
like
a
hours of
whole
philosophy
hour
circles.
about arguing about what a goal was. I'm not kidding you guys.
Well, we did
it
that before in the fall.
was ridiculous. So
The other thing I can add for this is, again, new to the board, not really familiar with, but I did do my PSBA training today. for it. So past all that though, a lot of what we discussed in our informal, hey, let's just meet at Starbucks and talk about this for a little bit, was the scheduling and how we want to build the goals with all the rest of the board members and the administration.
That's perfect.
So those are the things we really worked out a lot on our own, and we're still not completely there. And we started a Google Doc that is basically like a real skeleton type of thing with no real information yet. But we want to start to get to the point, and that's what, like Kaylin said, she missed the deadline to set up that goals meeting for this week.
And for me, one of the big things was making sure that I was on the same page as Chris and Kaylin, so that way we were all talking about the same thing, instead of me having this idea of what I was thinking, and Kaylin and Chris had these other 2 ideas, and it was more research based, more making sure that we were all going towards that same focus. So
yeah, we got a lot of groundwork accomplished, so I digress. Last thing I wanted to mention, I don't know if you all saw, because we had someone come to a board meeting talking about the Rock Hill Quarry. There were recently some politicians that formally sent, they've been calling for the closure of the Rock Hill Quarry due to health risk, which is not too far away from us. And so I just thought I would mention that because it's good that it seems like that's picking up a little bit more steam.
I can add to that.
Please, please.
So I was actually there, and it was cold as all get out. But Steve Sanacero, State Senator Sanacero, was there with Congressman Fitzpatrick. They both came out calling for the permanent closure of the facility. Right now, it's only temporarily closed or production is halted. But they're also now talking about creating an asphalt plant on that facility, which, according to them, would still be a health risk because the soil would be disturbed, putting the asbestos into the air potentially. And the quarry owners are saying that they don't have any results saying there's any asbestos in the air, but the Pennsylvania Department of Health and the Environmental Protection Agencies are all saying they just don't have enough information to be able to say that. So there's a disparity there. Disparity? What's the word?
Discrepancy.
Discrepancy.
Disparity or discrepancy?
Yeah.
It's late. It's after my bedtime. So there's a discrepancy there as far as, you know, who to believe. They've each kind of hired their own people to look into this. And I know that the Penridge School Board has also kind of jumped on the bandwagon and recommended that they close the facility, as have the commissioners in Bucks County. And quite frankly, with it being so close, as Keith said, or as Jackson said somewhere, it's about 1.5 miles from Richland Elementary and Strayer, and it's, what, 2.5, I guess, from Trump. So there's some concern about it being close to our schools as well.
Maybe we should ask Penridge, what did you say, Penridge? What exactly they're doing as far as if there's a resolution or, I don't know.
I'm not sure, but I'll find out.
Thank you, appreciate it. I'd like to give them support if possible. Thank you, that was a good elaboration. All right, moving on to the items for board action. And this is going to be regarding the resolution calling for charter school funding reform. Can I get a motion to vote on that item?
I'll move. Second for discussion, right?
Mr. Winters.
Mr. Wallace. Okay, thank you.
Discussion.
Has everybody read the thing before we go ahead headlong into this? We all know what we're voting on. Okay, just to let the public out there understand, the resolution being proposed here in no way discusses the validity or lack thereof of charter schools, cyber schools, what have you. It simply says that the funding formula is flawed and Harrisburg needs to redo how they're funding it. So just to make it that clear for those people who may be, no offense to everybody, but if those people may have pro-choice leanings, this does not in any way address that situation. It simply says that the funding mechanism for charters is poorly written and needs to be revised.
Where does this language come from?
PSBA drafted this language directly and issued this draft to all 500 school districts and is asking all 500 to adopt it. The numbers included are specific to Quakertown. Dr. Harn was kind enough to go through with tax help, I imagine, and find out the actual costs that we incur, and the numbers you see in front of you are our costs.
Just as a point of order, every day we get things through a listserv throughout the state of Pennsylvania. I've listed things out there, things that you're doing, we're doing. Other districts put theirs out there. This is Wednesday already. Monday and Tuesday's board meetings across the state. Boards have approved just the template without any information of local. I think one of my predecessors down, Dr. Scanlon down at Westchester, he updated his with his own local numbers like we have. but I've already seen 10, 20 of them already in the last 2 days. They're starting to come in. So, and what that would happen, you approve the resolution, it speaks volumes about what your position is, and we'll post it tomorrow or the next day out there so everyone can see across the state, because someone's keeping a tally.
Just as point of reference, we had a similar resolution a year or two ago regarding tax. What's that? There was a tax policy change in Harrisburg where they were going to change the property tax code and shift funding back to Harrisburg, and enough school districts sent in resolutions that was halted. It just didn't proceed.
Mhm.
So there is weight behind these resolutions if enough school districts respond.
Thank you for the additional detail. Any other discussion?
I almost don't like that, like you said, the language is such that it validates the need for such schools, which, many of us don't. And it's kind of like, you sign it, but it doesn't actually say we don't support charter schools at all, which I would like it to say. Now I'm not gonna, I just wanted to voice my concern about that because, by signing it almost by proxy, you're just saying, I just don't agree with the way it's funded. Not that, I don't agree with the need for these institutions that siphon public funding.
Sure.
If I may, how I've represented the district in the past, I think is consistent with your position, Mr. Akmanowitz. Why is that? I am all for competition, and when you have competition out there, but this is wasteful spending, incredibly wasteful spending, and so I've been out there on the record in the media, in the Inquirer front page story was up 4 years ago about loving the, bring it on. We will have the better program. We've got the better teachers. We got the better systems. We're and we're taxpayer and elected official represented. A charter school is not represented by any taxpayers. They are taxpayers, but they're not accountable to the taxpayer. That's one big thing. This is wasteful spending, as Dr. Scanlon had I think he put in his was a lot of words or some words, and it talks about why do we send money to a charter school, to a cyber charter school, for when they're getting support services for a psychologist or a counselor for 1 hour a month times 9 months, that may cost the district maybe $1,000 at most. But we're paying them for a special ed student that requires that $30,000 a year. That's ridiculous. So anyway, that's what this does.
So at this juncture, if there's no more conversation by anybody, I would just motion.
Well, just one thing to your point, I'm not trying to, the resolution says nothing on the validity of charter schools. It doesn't say yay or nay. It really addresses the funding, and it's hammering the funding for the school that fools. The closest criticism I'll see, and again, it doesn't support charter schools at all in any way, shape, or form. But the one thing where it's clear is towards the end, it says the cost of charter schools or school districts continue to grow significantly each year, and on a statewide basis are the most identified source of pressure on school district budgets. So it is critical of the existence of charter schools, essentially.
So it sounds like it's low-hanging fruit, and this is going to help us get immediate action for this.
It's the battle we can fight right now.
Yeah. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next is our public comment on fiscal items presented for a vote. Is there any public comment? All right, on our fiscal agenda is the Boucher and James bill list. Can I get a motion to vote on that item?
So moved.
Mr. Akmanowitz. Discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Abstention.
Unanimous aside from one abstention. Okay. Alright, next on the fiscal consent agenda, we have budget transfers for January 2020, approval of the treasurer's report for the same date, bills list, same date, disposition of obsolete technology, equipment, and supplies, approval of contract with Comcast for telephone service for Quakertown Community School District, approval of the contract for PSBA policy review services, approve agreement with Mind of the Athlete. Can I get a motion to vote on those items?
Can I ask a question about one of them?
Not until it's
Once
voted.
we-
Not until it's motion.
Once the motion's on the floor?
So moved.
Second.
No, discussion, anything?
We're using Comcast for a telecom. I guess this would be directed toward Joe. That wouldn't be part of our contract with the IU for internet service, or have we ever looked into an IP phone service provider to compete with Comcast or anything?
Well, Comcast is just providing SIP trunks in the district for phone service.
Oh, okay.
IU is providing us with an internet pipe for internet.
Okay, so they're separate.
They're separate in this case.
Yeah.
For us to go all internet-based phones, we have IP-based phones.
Yeah.
But to do internet phones, we would have to revamp our whole system. That'd be
Big time cost. Okay.
Any other discussion?
So, in the bills list, what is Shelter Box USA? It's a $1,100 purchase for under student activities. Would you know what that is by any chance? No. That's it. I don't know what.
I love the model.
Oh, what is it?
They're
Thanks.
They're a company that does shelter boxes basically for relief areas. My guess is it's probably maybe a student activities fund that bought it to help out people in need or for the buildings.
Alright, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Do you have any public comment on the facilities consent agenda? On that agenda, we have the approval of CoStar's proposal with Miller Flooring, award CoStar's contract for Nidegg Elementary School furniture, bid for an infield groomer, approve CoStar's proposal with Troxel for Nidegg Elementary School technology equipment, approved contract with SHI for Nidegg Elementary technology equipment. Can I get a motion on those items?
So moved.
I'll second.
All those in favor say, oh, sorry, discussion. I almost did it.
I'm
Discussion.
not sure if anybody's here who can answer this question, but can this infield groomer be used in any kind of conditions?
Garlic answers right there.
Because, I mean, I'm terrified that we have a wet field and you need to groom it and this thing gets slocked in the mud.
Well, you can't, there's only so much you do with the mud, and they're not gonna play with that money anyway.
Okay, so it's not gonna help in the mud situation, okay.
Other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next is public comment on the human resources items presented for a vote. Is there any public comment? Alright, on that agenda is resolution of consensual demotion, professional staff, supervisory, technology staff, confidential secretary staff, support staff, unit pay, and game workers. Can I get a motion to vote on those items?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
All those, discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Public comment on policy and program items presented for a vote. Any public comment? Okay, we have the approval contract between Bucks County Health Improvement Partnership and Quakertown Community School District for vaping cessation application initiative services. The BCIU programs and services, instructional materials and research services budget for the 2020-2021 school year, and approval for hiring PSBA to review and update the board policies. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
You good? No, sorry. Monowitz. Okay. Thank you.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Alright, now we're looking at our information items for January. Is that might be in type? Oh, never mind. Alright, we have.
Thanks.
Am I looking at this the wrong way here? Okay, that's the date approved. Sorry about that. So April 6th, we have a choir trip with Sundance Stage Lines. If you guys want to give more detail on any of these.
The choir trip's going out to San Diego.
There you go.
And Southern California, and there's probably a couple different like excursion types of things in there.
Nice.
So that's what that is.
Sounds like fun. Can I help? I'm just kidding. All right, and then May 28th, the National Junior Honor Society has a trip to Aquatopia. That sounds like fun. I'm not supposed to read all these out. Some of these, okay. I'm just gonna move along to. This is just about the temporary facilities for the BCIU. I'm not going to go into too much detail there. Take a look at the suspension report and then the statement of financial interest form available for your edification. There's no communication items. Now we're on to board comment for new business.
Can I make a comment just before we move on? Number one, the board was in executive session for approximately, I don't know whether you were gonna do it or not, I didn't wanna have it quiet.
I was going to, but I keep forgetting, so thank you.
The board was in executive session for approximately 20 minutes before the meeting to discuss a matter of school security and safety, a personnel matter, and a litigation matter. I also wanna note that it's a good idea to contract with PSBA to do your policy reviews, but I'm about 3/4 of the way finished another place where I'm doing it. Just pay attention, because not everything they recommend you may not want to do. So just don't accept blindly what they propose.
That's a good point.
Just want to make sure that I give you some cautionary instructions about accepting what they send to you.
Well, do we get you to look at them as well usually?
Sometimes.
You pay
I think it would be.
Isn't it always? All policies go to him.
Well, yeah, I think the lawyer should look
Yeah.
at policies. It's
We'll
probably
definitely be
a smart
engaging
idea.
you on that. We talked about that too, because some things they recommend just may not be applicable to our district. So it's a good point. Any new business?
I want to raise one issue. I didn't respond when the public comment was made. Wait until now to do it. Ms. Ritter raised an issue about the film shown. There was a sign-off sheet that allowed them to bow out, which is a good thing. But I guess the question is, I would like, my personal belief is this, what I'm going to say should be referred to the Ed Commission, Education Committee, because that's what their function is, I think. But there's certain things we wouldn't allow students to possess on their person walking through the halls. And the images she suggested would be one of those things. If they were walking down there and they were found to have such things on their phone, it could be an issue. So the question then becomes whether or not such images in the classroom is appropriate or not. And I'm sure in some scenarios it might be true, but in this particular case, I'm not so sure if it added to the education of the children, and perhaps the education committee should decide where appropriate and not appropriate and so forth and so on.
Ms. Mitchell, can Dr. Hoffman?
Yeah, please.
So we do have a board policy, it's 119, and an associated AR, which was followed in this case, and that a letter went out to parents. For this particular case, that is not a requirement that students view that video. It was on a list of potential movies that students could select from for an assignment if they had permission. We do also carefully review with teachers when they make the decision that the best choice that they have is an R-rated film, to make sure that the versions that we show, to the best of our ability, skip over any part that would be considered to be R-rated. We have similar policies in place for books, because while it's not as visual, many of the books that we read, particularly some books that were written maybe in the early 40s, 50s, 60s, use language that we would not consider to be appropriate in school today, and actually it's a great, for those situations, it's a great teachable moment for students to understand how things change. Movies, a little bit different. We certainly aren't trying to use nudity as a teachable moment, so we would skip through those parts or only show clips of videos related to what they are teaching. But we do have a board policy in place right now that was followed in this case, and alternate assignments are always available for students who either do not wish to participate in the activity or their parents don't wish for them to.
Just out of curiosity, what course is this for? Is it English?
It is for English. In this particular case, I don't know if you know if it's 11th grade that was doing it, and the book and the content is part of the curriculum. So the movie is not part of the the written curriculum, and then it has to happen, but the students would be reading that book.
I initially thought she was going to mention something. Because there's some books that I know that some parents don't want. For instance, there's a lot of racism that took place in our history, and some people are comfortable with their children reading it. And I'm an advocate for them reading it. They should know the tough truth. But in this case, when she started talking, I thought, I don't know if I'd be comfortable either. But you're saying they skip through those parts for sure, or that's what they should have done, or?
So in this particular case, we have, and I was going back and forth with Mr. Beaver via email during this to make sure that I knew which movie it was in which class, because we had talked about a couple. And to be quite honest, in some PG-13 movies, there may be things that parents aren't comfortable with, and so we do let them know about that as well, because even though the students are over 13, it is parental guidance, and we would like parents to know that we're showing something that is not G. In this particular case, the way that I read, and maybe Mr. Lee can correct me if I'm wrong, but the way that I read what the teachers sent out, it very clearly states that it is an optional assignment. It lists it as one of several movies that could be viewed by the students, and even says if you have permission. So I don't think this was intended to be a whole, like we're going to sit and watch this whole movie for the whole class and talk about it.
My concern has nothing to do with the way it was handled. It was clearly handled properly. You gave the parents the permission to opt out. That's not an issue. The issue is whether or not the teacher should have had this as an option to present. Because you're giving Ms. Mitchell herself, and this is what I was thinking, I'm not the standards police. I'm sure brief nudity happens, and children are old enough to handle brief nudity. But there was enough of what was said that would suggest to me that this particular film was a little too much for something we want to present as an educational research for the class. And again, that's what I'm concerned about, is there are certain movies that the teachers should not have the option to include. Who makes that decision? That's why I'm saying the educational committee should take it on. That's my request, my suggestion.
Man, what I'd like to do is to, on behalf of the board, acknowledge, because we didn't comment, which was good early on, that the board discussed it. We forwarded it to the education committee and make her aware of the date and time that's going to happen.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
For the record, my son just turned 11. I am not ready for teenage years. Oh my god. Because I might just be being super protective, but when she's talking about it, I'm cringing. I'm like, oh no. This is what I have to look forward to. But kids these days, they know and see, and they say a lot more than I did. when
I would
was
recommend
your
you
age.
watch the movie though, Into the
Is
Wild.
it really good?
It is. It's artful nudity, not gratuitous nudity. How about we put it that
Huh.
way?
Interesting.
But like the Statue of David, you know, you wouldn't necessarily keep somebody from going to an art museum because there's nudity there.
Right.
You know.
It's an interesting point.
Yeah. Anyway, I did want to bring up more new business if you got it.
Yep.
There's a lot of music coming up that nobody really mentioned anytime soon. So March 3rd is the high school band concert. March 5th is the Quakertown High School Jazz Festival at the middle school at Strayer. And March 6th is the Strayer Jazz Festival at Strayer. And March 10th is the Trumbowersville second grade concert. And past all that, there was one other thing. Since it was brought up by Ron Jackson and sort of discussed a little bit, maybe we should put on the schedule now so we can get it advertised, a goals committee meeting.
Yeah, so I talked to Anita about that, and I do want to give the dates over to the administration to give them a chance to, I'll do that for sure by the end of this week, to make sure you all can attend those, and then we'll advertise them. Sound good? Because we have them, we sorted it out. So.
Yeah, I don't want to make it seem like we're trying to hide stuff. That's
We're not.
Did not take it that way, sir.
Okay, good deal.
You were more than welcome at Starbucks.
She would have been there if I was invited, sir.
She took it that way, but we would have invited you to Starbucks if we wouldn't have really wanted
I
to
really
come.
like coffee.
I actually hate coffee.
Any other new business? All right, final public comment. Would anybody like to make final public comment? Feel free.
Good evening, board. My name is Teresa Del Rossi from Milford Township. See you again. I just have a question regarding the policy readings for tonight. As a resident of the district, where would I find a copy of a policy that was introduced tonight for first reading? I attended the policy meeting on February 13th, and there were no policies introduced that evening for first reading. In addition, on board docs, it specifically states that there are no policies for first or second reading. So to hear that a policy was introduced tonight for first reading, and I also checked board docs, and there's no changes that are on there for first reading of potential changes. So I'd just like to know if I could get the answer to that question.
I think it's, you want to take it? Go ahead.
It's in the policy committee report, and all of the policies that the committee approved to move forward or told us to go ahead and move forward are posted.
So they're currently updated.
It's in the standing committee report. That may be why there's some
It's
confusion.
in the policy committee reports, as they haven't been approved yet. They aren't posted in the policy manual.
Okay, so you're reading something tonight that the public does not have access to.
No, they do.
It's in the public content of that committee.
It's in the public
Public content of the policy committee report.
So, if you go into the agenda for tonight's meeting and you scroll down to where it says standing committee reports, click on policy committee report, and it says Mrs. Weed, and it does list all of those for the public for your viewing.
So the changes are on there.
Yes.
That should not differ the next meeting when I attend.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
To be clear, the policy committee could decide to make additional changes to the language, which then would be reflected.
But that wouldn't take
the
place
next
till the
time.
next
That would
policy
trigger
meeting.
the first reading.
Correct. That would have to have another first reading, am I correct?
I don't know that that's the
I don't
case.
think
Would not require another first read because they're just an amendment. First reads are providing it to everyone for comment.
But it wouldn't take place until another meeting would take place.
So it probably will be the same, but the purpose of having a first reading and a second reading is so that the policy committee and the board can review it, and if there's anything they want to change in the language, there's time to do that before the vote on adoption.
So the changes presented tonight are in that document?
Yes.
Yes.
Actually, I had them open as I was going through. So I had the report here, but I also had them open.
Any other public comment? Sure. And if you could state your name and area of residence, please.
Hi, Candace Titus, Quakertown Borough. I did not plan on speaking tonight, so I don't have anything prepared. I just wanted to make a comment on twice tonight. Comments were made by a few people that if the start time committee were to make a recommendation to the board, that there would be an incurred cost and an increase in transportation, and that cost would continue year after year. And I just want to comment that that's not entirely accurate. Yes, there would be a cost to continue each year, but that cost would go down. We do have a trend of declining enrollment. We do have the possibility of an additional building closure. With the redistricting committee, there is a possibility, I know it's not, definitely happening, but there is the possibility of 6th grade moving into Strayer. There is a possibility of 6th grade moving back into the elementary schools. That building would no longer be required. So I would just like to ask that the start time committee and a representative from Levy do their due diligence with projections of what those costs would look like, similar to what was presented tonight with the tax increase projected over the next 5 years. Something along those lines, that yes, the first year the cost would look like this, but in 2 years' time, in 5 years' time, with the declining enrollment, with the possibility of building changes, if this happens, we save this much money. If this happens, we save this much money. So that's all. I just wanted to make a comment that yes, the initial cost may be significant, but that over time, that cost would go down. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. And I hope that if you're on the committee, there's a possibility of still doing a 3-tier system. I've seen other districts do it. I don't know, it might not be possible for us, but that could be a part of us keeping the costs down. And that's something I've mentioned to our leadership as well. All right, any other public comment? Name and area of residence, please.
My name is Chris Roth from Richland Township. I have a request, but I want to give you a quick glimpse of where it comes from. So for those of you who don't know me, I teach at Strayer. I've taught at the academy. I was a principal. I worked at district office. I was president of QCA. I graduated from Quakertown. My dad's on the Education Foundation Committee. My wife works in the district. My sister works in the district. So the point of that is I hope you realize I'm very invested in this district. But most importantly, I have 2 kids that go to this district. So my son's a junior at the high school. My daughter's in 8th grade. And my request is a concern that I've seen over the last few years, and it's building as I watch my son, is the stress level that is on some of our students, especially those that are in the higher academic classes. So my son takes two AP classes. He goes to the tech school. He wants to be a livestock manager, so he goes for the animal science program. He's heavily involved. He's in NJHS. He plays sports. He does all those types of things also. I'm a junior class advisor, so I get to interact with juniors. I'm a TSA advisor. Emily's one of my students who was here, and interacting with them. And just listening to them talk, just sitting back and listening to them talk, it concerns me. It concerns me to watch some of the stress levels that they're under. And these are kids that want to do awesome things. These are kids that are involved in every activity. I mean, you hear Emily talk. You hear my son was one of the students that stood up here when he was a freshman. But I believe that for some of them, they're not sure what to do, and they feel like they're crumbling a little bit. Because they want to please, they want to do awesome, they want to go to great universities, they want to be involved. But the workload that I watch them go through, and the stress that I watch them go through, and the social emotional toll that it's taking on some of them, it scares me. It scares me to watch my own son. It scares me to watch friends. I live in this district for 2 main reasons. One is the people that work in this district, and 2 is the opportunities. I would not want to take away the opportunities that my son has had to go to tech school, to take AP classes, to be involved in sports, the multitude of activities. It's amazing. But my challenge is, in some ways, leadership, can we help these kids that are struggling with this? My information is very limited. So I'm not asking for action on my limited information. What I'm asking from the board of the district is to take an initiative to gather information from the student's perspective. So to do a thorough information gathering, especially for those students that are the high achievers, on what is their workload like on a daily basis. What is their stress levels like on a daily basis? What are their goals? I'd also like to see, because I hear often from high school teachers, well, we need to prepare from college. To talk to our recent graduates and say, being able to compare the 2 things. My son hears, well, you need to do all this work because you got to get ready for college. that is most kids in college go to class 15 to 18 hours a week. My son goes to class 35 hours a week and then has an hour or two of homework every night. Compared to a college student, even if they had 3 hours of homework a night, they still wouldn't be in school as much as my son is. And I see some students starting to make choices of giving up certain activities because they just can't do it all. It's just too much. So that's my request, is to gather information, to see where our students are at, and then to use that information to decide if there's something we can do to help them in these situations so that they can continue to go to places like West Point, go to places like MIT, but make sure they're going in a way that they're not reaching their stress levels or breaking down or having those struggles as they're going through their junior and senior years. Thank you.
Mr. Roth, can I ask you one quick question?
No. Yes, you can. Just kidding.
I don't mean to pick on you, but you're the parent who walked up and asked the question. And I've heard this dozens of times, where parents and students who are the high achievers will talk about stress. And it's always the same. I'm taking multiple AP classes. I'm involved in multiple societies. I have multiple volunteers in my doing. And then I have homework I have to do. And I need help. And most of the time what they're saying is, I don't want to do the homework. My question is, if you're, and I'm not trying to phrase this in a negative way, but when parents who are concerned about their children, it seems to me the first logical step would be to cut back on all the things they're doing so they have more time to do the homework. And, you know, maybe I'm being simplistic, but when I hear students and parents always saying the same thing, they're doing this, it doesn't surprise me they're stressed. It surprises me that they don't cut back. And I want to know, you know, how would you react to that? I mean, am I wrong? Is there a reason they need to do all this and not homework?
My son wouldn't. So when I talk to the high achievers, and I'll use my son as an example, it's not that he won't do his homework or wouldn't do his homework. I mean, he wouldn't even dream of not doing his homework. And most of these students would not dream of ever not doing their homework. They want the straight A's that they have. They want the GPA because they want to go to the schools that's honored. So he has given up things. He has quit clubs. He's quit sports. He's quit certain things for those reasons. I guess my concern in making those decisions is helping them make that balance, because also those things are a lot of what bring them joy and bring them the relief and the stress relief. So if it's all homework and he gives up soccer and gives up volleyball and gives up FFA and gives up 4-H and gives up those types of things, that would be one of my concerns of giving those up. The other would be, we've just done a visit to Virginia Tech as one of the schools he's looking at and talking to the admissions counselor there. And what we've heard from visiting Del Valle, Penn State, Virginia Tech, and soon visiting Oklahoma State, Kansas State, from those schools is they want to see a well-rounded, all those different parts to a student. So they don't want a student to give up all those clubs and have straight A's in their classes, but not have something to say, well, I also did FFA, and I also had this experience, and I also showed a pig at the farm show, which is what my son does. So I think one is helping kids to make a balance and helping parents to make a balance, a piece of it. I mean, my son has the ability to have a mother who's a high school guidance counselor, so he gets that to be able to speak into him and cut out some of those things. But it's helping to figure out where do those things balance. And then helping to figure out, is there something from the academic end that we can help with? And that's where I'm not looking for action, I'm looking for information. Because maybe my son's the outlier. Or maybe the kids that I've talked to are the outliers. And if you gather information, you realize it's this percentage or it's this part. And maybe we can see trends on how to help those kids that are in need. I would hate to do something based on limited data or limited information. I believe that would be irresponsible.
There was an article in the paper this week in the Intelligence, and it sounds like it's a problem that's all over the place. It's not just here. Just so you know that.
Sounds like the pressure of colleges or expectations for some of these programs demand so much, and because they only accept a certain amount of students, they make those expectations so high. And when you have these kids who want to do so well they're willing to reach for the stars, and yet that puts so much pressure on them.
Well, the other thing I would argue, and it goes back to Mr. Jack's question, is every kid's different. So that's the other reason I wouldn't want a carte blanche or across the board, because a stress level for one kid, and we know as adults, is different stress level for another kid. What one student can handle is different for the other. So to say across the board, you can only do this or you should only do that, I think that would be irresponsible also. It's, if students are at a place where they're struggling, and I think some parents are at a place where they're not sure what to do with it, if they don't have a background in education or aren't going through it at the present time. I mean, when I went to college, it's so different than when my son's going to college. When I went to high school and I graduated from Quakertown, there was one AP class. That's all existed. It's not how many I took, that's what existed. It was a totally different mindset. So I think some parents are at a loss on even how to help make those decisions or what are the best decisions in those avenues.
I think there's a bit of a disconnect too between what colleges are telling students when they're coming in and what, and I don't know if it trickles down to the high schools or if it goes from the high school to the college. That I'm not real sure about, but I know the students that come into the college where I work, and granted it's a community college, they come in having gone to these schools and they're taking these AP classes, they're doing this, and a lot of them choose to go there because it's a little bit cheaper for just their general education courses. But then they get there and and I think you mentioned this a little bit, the rigor of the college course is not as intense as the rigor of the AP courses. And not to say that the college course isn't intense, but the AP course is just that much more intense. So I think there's that disconnect between what some of those better schools and bigger schools are telling people as far as what they're looking for coming in. When I went to school, it was the same thing. We didn't have AP courses. I didn't take an AP course because they didn't exist in North End. When I got to college, same thing. We had a lot of people that had the same experience, and we got there, and one of the things that they taught us was that a lot of what you learn at the college level happens outside of the classroom, and that's going back to what you're talking about, where your son is taking these other activities, he's doing these other things, but there's a learning experience from that he's missing out on. So that teamwork from the volleyball team, the FFA stuff, and I think that's where the situation needs to get fixed. And like I said, I don't know if it's from the high schools up to the college or the other way around. Maybe it's a little bit of both, but I think that's where we need to kind of focus our attention.
And what I want to make clear, and I said, the opportunities that we offer in this district are amazing, and the diversity that we offer in this district are amazing. And the AP classes, it's not saying we should not have them, because we're visiting Virginia Tech and they say, well, if you pass your AP Calc class, you don't have to take the math class, and if you pass your AP Physics test, you don't have to. So those are amazing opportunities, financial opportunities, advancement opportunities, and the diversity of the opportunities we have don't exist in all of their schools. The fact that my son can go to a tech school for half a day is astounding to the colleges that we visit. They don't even understand, because there's no other kids coming with his experiences walking into the schools that he's going to come in with, and still have AP courses at the same time. So I would not want to see the opportunities limited. I would not want to see the clubs limited. It's how do we figure out to help students navigate these waters and these opportunities that are sometimes so many that they just want to say yes to everything or feel the need to say yes to everything. And yet they're drowning in knowing where to go next, what to do next, and how to figure it out.
So thank you so much for bringing that to our attention and saying it out loud. I mean, I think one of the important takeaways here is self-care is really important, and I think one of the things we should also be teaching our students is the self-care aspect. And self-care is holistic, mental and physical, and part of what you're talking about falls under that self-care category. We provide this great venue for our students to excel, just like a gym. A gym can have all the top-notch equipment, but you can't expect every single person in that gym to bench 300. It's not going to happen. But you can provide them the resources to maybe eventually get to 300, right? And we just need to be conscious when we're assigning classes, when we're suggesting to students that they also consider their own self-care, and parents should be aware as well. I want to see my kid excel. I I'm sure we all do, to the best of their ability, but at what expense, which I think is the tonality that you're bringing to our attention, to remind us.
And I think sometimes we forget, and I'm a teacher for 20 some years, I see education through my teacher's eyes. It takes effort to take a step back and see it through my kid's eyes or a student's eyes. So do we take a step back and look through a high school student's eyes? As a teacher, I teach one class, I assign my homework or my workload for my one class, that's all I see. That kid's gonna go to 6 more classes that day. So by the time they get to the end of that day, what does that look like through their eyes? On top of going to basketball practice after school and then doing this and then wanting to be part of, the class and everything else, the next thing you know, it's 10 o'clock at night, and now I'm getting to the point. I mean, imagine leaving here and now saying, now I'm going to start my homework for tomorrow for my classes.
No, I agree. My daughter goes through the same thing. She's in 10th grade, and most nights she's in the music and theater thing. She's getting home at 9 o'clock, then starting her homework, and it usually takes her a good 3 hours to do it. But beyond that, what I was thinking is we're very good, it seems, at gathering data for academic progress and achievement here. But, I don't even know how it would be possible to gather that data on stress levels. I don't know, but I do think it would be something that would be worth looking into. Are we overtaxing our kids? Are we overstressing them with these type?
My thoughts are it's a great conversation to be a subset of our strategic plan discussion, goals discussion, and all that. To add that in there, this is not the first time. I know Doc Kelly and I have been in several meetings with students and faculty members, mostly faculty members with Doc. I've met with students every year, but I haven't done it this year so far, and last year I kind of been not out of it because I'm in the building often. But I think if we put that into that under our culture component or whatever domain you're thinking about creating, that we look at it that way.
Great. All right. Well, great discussion. I appreciate all the feedback, and thank you for mentioning that. It's something that we need to be mindful of. Is there any other public comment before we adjourn the meeting? All right, I'm going to mention a couple of dates. So March 5th, there's a facilities committee. March 12th, a policy committee meeting. March 26th, there's finance committee, education and curriculum committee meeting, and also a board meeting. April 2nd, facilities and policy committee meetings. April 9th is a board meeting. April 22nd, finance, and a board meeting. And can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Discussion.
Who was the second?
Aye.
Okay, all fair, those favors, aye. All right, good night.
Mr. Petrucci told me to vote aye.